Press the button. All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another live episode of Keeping Karlsson number, what are we here? 380. I don't even know why. 385. Why do we keep counting? I don't know, but you can't stop now. So once you've done something.
It's not even an accurate count. We've done more than 385.
I know. But what are you going to do? Just like one day, just be like Keeping Karlsson December 5th? And then it's like everyone will be like, what why'd you stop? And it's like,
yeah, once you start counting, as pointless as it is, you just can't stop.
It's kind of like how bad traditions go from generation to generation. It's like, why are we even doing this? But it's just like people do things because they've always been done. But sometimes things are bad. But I don't think this is like a harmful
Speaking
tradition.
Of which,
so
happy 8th night of Hanukkah.
Ah, you too, of course. Lie, 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 lie. Okay,
that's a Havdalah song.
Don't you sing that when you light the candles also for?
No, I think that's like yeah. I don't think that's a Hanukkah lighting song.
Maybe not in the calm residence.
I don't
Rosenswag.
I don't think it's any residence. We
Okay.
should start though. I'm ready. We're all business, guys. It's all business tonight. No fun. No friendship.
No, the fun will be part of the show.
Business.
Let's do that in the show. We can have lots of fun and friendship.
That's going to be our new motto.
Okay.
No fun, no friendship, just business.
All right, here we go.
I'm sorry. Hi, thanks to everyone for tuning in the chat. And as Elon would like to say, remember to download this episode or like do a listen on Spotify or Pocket Casts or whatever. So because our network doesn't count YouTube views. So if you want to support us, it's something really small you can do, along with the 5-star written iTunes review. That would be so nice also.
For sure. This episode, though, actually won't be any different because there's going to be like no edit points. Normally, also the audio version is like much cleaner, but this one's going to be like clean even on the YouTube video. All right, here we go. Yay! Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys whose IRs are bursting wider than Lewis's pants in that last Thanksgiving episode. I'm your host, Elon Dubrovsky, and with me, as always, to discuss all of the injuries from around the NHL, and spoiler, there are quite a few of them, is my very good friend, the fantasy hockey robot, Brian Come.
Hello, Elon. Hello, everybody. Yes, today we are talking about guys who are hurt, but when one door closes, another door opens. I guess these aren't two separate doors. It's just like a door closes on one guy, he can't play, and then a separate door opens. Anyway, it's going to be really fun to go through the entire league, all 31 teams, and find out who gets to benefit from somebody missing some time.
Yeah, and Brian says all 31 teams.
32 teams.
Because we're going to skip Arizona, because they seem fine. But yeah, I believe this saying also has to do with a window. I thought like a door closes and a window opens or something. But anyways, maybe people can tweet at us and give us a fact check there.
With their favorite motivational opportunity mottos.
Yeah. And of course, as we're going through the league, if there happens to be a hot streak or cold streak, we could stop down for a second. But the general plan is this is going to be the Everybody Hurts episode where we're all just going to cry about what's been a really, to me, weird week of fantasy hockey. Maybe you're going to tell me that it's just like because it's my players that are getting injured, so I'm feeling it more than usual, but it just seems like every day. It's like someone's like a COVID protocol. There's people getting sick that are not even, it's like non-COVID illness is happening more than I feel like I ever remember. Maybe it's because it's flu season. I don't know what's going on, but it's like everyone seems to be hurt. But okay, before we get to that, we got a couple pieces of business to get to. Okay, first of all, thanks for listening. We really appreciate it, okay? Second of all, this episode of Keeping Karlsson is proudly presented by DobberHockey.com, the #1 fantasy hockey website in the world. I guess I stumbled there. Okay, DobberHockey.com. This episode of Keeping Karlsson is presented by DobberHockey.com, the #1 fantasy hockey website in the world. It's really the best place to go for all the great articles about everything going on in the league every single day. They really do a great job. They have the smartest writers there. I really like the team at Dobber Hockey. Plus, the tools at Frozen Tools cannot be matched. I use them to prep the show and to strategize for my leagues all the time. So that's DobberHockey.com. Number 2, Brian, we promised that anyone who left us a 5-star review with a comment over the last month was going to be entered into a Michael raffle for a cool piece of Keeping Karlsson merch. And the month of November is over, which means it's time for the draw. So I've got all the reviews here. Brian, can you please type into Google random number between 1 and 210? That's going to point me to a row in my spreadsheet. and we're going to find out who wins the raffle and wins the cool piece of Keeping Karlsson merch.
Okay, I'm typing really loudly so everybody can hear that that this is for real. And I hit enter. And the problem is that Google is not my default search engine. So let me do it again. And the number is 32.
32. Okay, let me bring this up right here. All right, so B-Man32323232 left us a really nice review saying energy with a capital E. Best cure for my Monday blues is listening to the KK Pod. Brian and Elon bring the energy every week. Their insight has guided me through the tough decisions I've had to make as a fantasy manager from draft. Thank you so much, Brian. Like, this is a really nice review. We super appreciate it. It goes on with platitudes that we appreciate, and we are going to send you a cool piece of Keeping Karlsson merch. So if you're listening to this, we don't know who you are, but you left us a review on November 29th and tweeted us. Tell us I'm B-Man3232323232, and then we'll get in contact and send you your piece of merch. Congratulations.
I like that you called him Brian, or you called them Brian. I'm not sure if you even noticed. Just so you know, this wasn't me. B-Man32323232 is
Did
not
I? Yeah, I
my
didn't know
alias.
that either.
Yeah,
That's funny.
just very subconsciously. So thanks a lot, B-Man32323232. 32 is my new favorite number. What a coincidence that B-Man323232 was also
Okay.
number 32 on the spreadsheet. Some numerologist needs to get in on this.
How did that happen? Okay, now I want. Okay, that is odd, but okay. Yeah, and thanks of course to everyone who left us a 5-star review. We really appreciate it. And even if you missed the deadline for our contest, it still wouldn't hurt our feelings if you decided to still leave us a 5-star review. Helps the show. But okay, let's go and start earning those reviews. Before we start going through every single team, Brian, I just wanted to discuss really quick, like, some general strategies in this era. Like, this is not going away anytime soon. I think this era of random COVID protocol enterings and general injuries, it just seems like injuries are becoming a bigger and bigger part of fantasy hockey. Again, if you're listening, you disagree with me, let me know. But just to me, it feels that way. I'm starting to think that I need to change the way I play because, like, I listen to the Stream Scheme by Dave Betton, looking at the schedule for the next week. I do my own analysis of the schedule and try to come up with my plan of how I'm going to use my moves. And, sometimes it works out that, like, I want to maybe add a couple guys. If I have 4 moves per week, like we have in Cupful, usually I want to make a couple right away of players who have really good schedules. All of these kind of thoughts in your head. But the problem is you need to apparently take into account the fact that you're going to get hit. Like, just random people are throwing, like, bowling pins at you while you're trying to walk across the, I don't know, I'm trying to come up with an analogy here. I was thinking
Banana
of Squid
Peels
Game.
Mario Kart would be such an easy analogy here.
Maybe I'm thinking of a new video game that hasn't been invented yet. But yeah, I mean, I'm starting to wonder, because, like, I'll tell you what happened to me this week in the Cupful. I used 3 ads by Thursday. I thought that was fine. I set myself up how I wanted to for the rest of the week against Ben, who, by the way, I'm going to lose to. Congratulations, Ben. Then I suffered my 4th injury. I already had Barkov, Giordano, D'Angelo in my IR. Then Kemper was announced that he was going to, miss the game. So I was like, so I stashed him. I actually had to drop Ben Bishop to clear an IR spot. So fine, I wasn't playing. Who knows if he's ever going to play again. Anyways, so whatever. I stashed Kemper. I added Alex Iafallo. I saw he had a good schedule. Then, like, the next day, Justin Falk went on the COVID protocol. Now I have 5 injured players. I have no more moves left, even if I wanted to drop someone from IR. Then all of a sudden, and again, Brian, or not again, but I happened to be on a team where I could really use another goalie. Then all of a sudden, the next day, Binnington, COVID protocol. Shestyorkin, injured. And it's like, I could have used a goalie. I saw the news right away. I could have gone and added Husso or Georgiev, and we'll talk about both of them throughout this show, but I was out of moves. So it was like a total fail of a week for me. I feel like I really blew it by using up my moves. So I just feel like moving forward, at least to tell you my plan is I think I'm going to have to think harder about, I need to save moves. Even if I think through my strategy for the week and think I'm not going to need any more moves, I feel like you just need to save it because you have to assume you're going to get hit with an injury. And if you don't, then, mazel tov, and you could use your extra move on Sunday if you need to stream or plan for next week. But I'm really starting to feel like you need to conserve those moves for injuries, which stinks. I don't like it, but it seems like that's the way the world is now.
And you're saying this is more than before that you have to do this. And I think you're right. I actually also burned a lot of my moves early this week because I found, when to use your moves is a whole other strategic point of fantasy. And I feel like so far this season, I haven't quite nailed it. I'm either making moves that are too long term when I actually have a chance short term to really make a difference in my week, or I'm making moves too short term that then bite me long term. It's like, well, why didn't I just add that guy and not worry about what the next, like, one extra game played from Joe Schmo would do for my fantasy team? So, like, finding that balance of exactly when and how to use your moves is really tough, because the longer you wait in the week to use those moves, the fewer games you can usually add to your roster. But like you're saying, Elon, I used all my moves early this week, and I found myself on the outside looking in on a couple ads that I would have liked to make for a week or two out. In fact, I used my last move, my only one that was left, to add Sonny Milano off of waivers, which he wasn't going to play a game for me this week, but I had to look longer term. And I'm not sure if that's overcorrecting for mistakes I felt I made about not looking long term enough in how I used my weekly moves. But we're all trying to find that exact right balance. So if you have a strategic tip for how you like to use your moves, or when you find yourself using them, we're interested in hearing at Keeping Karlsson.
Yeah, because I guess you're right, Brian. It's not only a matter of, making sure that you have the acquisitions available for if you're hit with an injury. You also maybe just want to keep yourself available to potentially take advantage of another injury that happens where there's a player who benefits. One of those doors opens, like you said. By the way, that's really great that you got Sonny Milano. I feel like I already said like 5 shows in a row that people should be adding Sonny Milano. So the fact that you're able to get him so late after he's got like 18 points the last 18 games or whatever it is, like, congratulations. I think you're going to be holding him all season, and you did a great job. But okay, speaking of Sonny Milano, let's get started. We're going to go through the league alphabetically, and we're just going to talk about the injuries on all the teams, because pretty much every team has big injuries. We'll talk about the impact. So starting in Anaheim, Ryan Getzlaf was injured on Tuesday versus LA. He's week to week with an LBI. He just was put on the IR. Adam Henrique was out with his own injury, but he actually returned on Friday. But then he went down with a different injury. He had an upper body injury. Then he went down on Friday with a lower body injury. We don't have an update as of now, so I don't know how long it's going to be for Henrique. Getzlaf's going to be out a little while. Probably, I'd imagine, not great news for Troy Terry. Those are the two guys that Terry was playing with for that whole amazing point streak that started the season. So now Terry's got, I guess, all new line mates. It was Sam Steele who jumped up to center Terry and Henrique on Friday with the hotline of Zegras, Milano, and Raquel sticking together. But then I'm seeing on Frozen Tools at the end of the game, I guess after Henrique got injured, then Rickard Raquel moved to play with Terry and Steele, which if that sticks will lead to Milano and Zegras in search of a new winger. I'm just guessing like maybe Silverberg gets back in the top 6 for this. So obviously we'll have to wait and see what the lines are. A lot of people don't realize that we have this at Game Day Lines Twitter account. We also have the website, gamedaylinetweets.com, where you can keep track of the lines for each team, but we don't have updated lines for Anaheim yet. I'm sure they'll skate on Monday. So yeah, we need to see how the lines will shake out. But I'm curious, Brian, like with Getzlaf out, potentially Henrique out, should we be worried about Troy Terry? Like, yeah, he has 2 goals in his last 3 games, so that's good. He had another good week, and that was with Getzlaf not there for a lot of it. Obviously, you could look at it in terms of like Troy Terry's so great that now like, we should be getting excited about Sam Steele, especially since Anaheim plays 5 games next week, which is maybe a big headline we should say. So the fact that you got Sonny Milano is even more crazy and awesome that you're able to get him for a big week. But yeah, so like, how big of an impact will this Getzlaf injury have in terms of hurting Troy Terry and benefiting Sam Steele, who's looking like he's going to be the new center for Troy Terry?
Well, Sam Steele is one name in a long line of Ducks that we've been waiting for to do something, right? Sam Steele and Troy Terry and Max Comtois have all been names we've been watching for the last couple seasons. And actually, referenced Troy Terry earlier in the season as someone, when we were talking about Trevor Zegras, another Duck who we were getting excited about at the time. It's like, well, we've been waiting on Troy Terry. Nothing's happened. So now, yeah, it's Sam Steele's chance to do something, and playing with Troy Terry should put him in a pretty good spot. We're still trying to tease apart exactly what it is that Troy Terry is doing himself to make good things happen offensively for his line, and how much of their success belongs to him, and how much belongs to Getzlaf, and how much belongs to Henrique. And actually just zeroing in on Troy Terry's production, because I don't think we've gotten specific about him in at least a few weeks. So right now he's actually on this funny little run where he has 4 goals and no assists in his last 8 games. So if anyone's scoring, it's Troy Terry So if Troy Terry isn't scoring, Troy Terry isn't pointing, but he has those 4 goals on 15 shots, which obviously, is that's just a couple less than a couple shots per game, and 4 goals on those is a little high. So, I don't know. Am I the only one feeling a little concerned that Troy Terry isn't picking up any assists? We knew a slowdown was coming, so I'm not like alarmed, but I am still curious about exactly what Troy Terry's production looks like when all things are normal. I mean, the thing is, you're Troy Terry, you're not going to get to assist on many Ryan Getzlaf goals. Playing with Getzlaf is very much a one-way street, right? In which direction the puck is going from passer to shooter, with Getzlaf being the passer 9.5 times out of 10. And the same goes for Henrique, who doesn't score a lot of goals either. But good for Terry because he's the one who's cleaning up on his line. He's on pace. Did you know, Elon? Troy Terry is on pace for 51 goals, 15 goals in 24 games.
He's having a good year.
Yeah, it's been amazing. But obviously, like as we've said, he's having a really good year. We can't expect it to be so good. Troy Terry, I think, is scoring on at least twice as many shots as we would expect him to. Of course, we know this. We're not mad at him for it. Still feels like a solid 60-point guy to me. But just to go back to your question now and zoom back out, are we worried about Troy Terry losing his line mates? I can tell you that even with Ryan Getzlaf and Adam Henrique, Troy Terry's line was on like this 2-week stretch of seeing some of its most challenging 5-on-5 opposition of the season. Like we're seeing declining shot share, declining expected goal share. And I guess that's what happens when other teams know that the Troy Terry line is the one that they need to start scouting and making and game planning for. So even with Troy Terry's usual line mates and Getzlaf and Henrique, we were starting to see that line start to come back down to earth. And we're looking for a takeaway implication here. I mean, I think Getzlaf is playing well, and I think it's bad for Troy Terry to lose him as a really strong setup man because Terry has been an amazing finisher. Henrique is a guy who I think is like reasonably replaceable. He gets the job done, but he never really excites me, and I think he has some flaws in his game that might wash out whatever of the positives he offers. So we'll see if he's out at all. It'd be good, I think, just for stability for him still to be around with Troy Terry. And Sam Steele, we'll see. I think he makes, if you're, I think, feel like we've said this on so many episodes. If you've missed out on Trevor Zegras and Troy Terry, and then we added Sonny Milano to the list. And now I think we should add Sam Steele to the list. The Ducks play 5 times this week, including twice Monday, Tuesday to kick things off. That's not a bad time to at least see what Sam Steele has to offer. And maybe he's a quick add and a quick drop. Or maybe he and Terry click for a bit because Getzlaf's week to week. So Terry is looking like Terry's line needs that third piece or maybe second piece if Henrique is out longer. Why not take a chance on Sam Steele? Because at this point, Troy Terry has become the kind of player that you want guys who play with him.
Yeah, so there you go. So like you say, Brian, seems like a reasonable opportunity to grab Sam Steele. At the same time, now I'm starting to get scared about using too many ads early on, so you got to weigh the pros and cons there, but it could be something for sure. And by the way, I'll just repeat like I've been doing every week about Milano. It's like Trevor Zegras, that's the one who's like amazing, and it's Milano obviously benefiting. No shade, like I'm sure Milano is like helping a lot, but Trevor Zegras is just showing himself to be so great. He's got 14 points in his last 10 games now, almost at a 70-point pace on the season. His shots are wild, like Raquel and Milano playing with him, so like they're exciting to me. At this point, Brian, I'm just going to say it. If I had a choice right now for the rest of the year, Zegras or Troy Terry, I'd take Zegras. And I know you're saying Terry's on a 50-goal pace, but I'm just like totally on this Trevor Zegras train at this now. He's to me my favorite Duck, the one I would want over anyone else.
It's really funny because I talked about Troy Terry being this goals machine with no assists, and Zegras is the flip side of that. Zegras has 9 assists in his last 7 games, no goals. Even though, but here's the upshot. Zegras has no goals on 23 shots in his last 5 games. So Zegras is averaging almost 5 shots a game. I think that's thanks to, especially to one monster 8-shot game he had. But that's great to get 8 shots in an NHL game. So, not just anybody does that. And Zegras has been shooting consistently on a pretty regular basis. So he looks pretty good to me. I think Zegras I'd have at least even with Terry. I don't know that I have, like, you want me to try and pick between them. I guess maybe I'll lean Zegras because I feel like Terry without someone to set him up like Getzlaf might end up being a little lost, and Zegras seems to be able to drive play himself. Seems to. I haven't found any, it's kind of like a hunch I'm going on, but both Zegras and Terry look good. If I had to pick one rest of the season, I might lean ever so slightly to Zegras, but I think it's really close between them.
I think if you've got Terry and you can make a trade for Zegras, you do it. But like again, Brian obviously thinks it's really close, and probably you should listen to Brian. But okay, we'll see how many other things we have slight disagreements on or not as we go through the show. So Arizona, like I said, they seem fine, no big injuries, so we'll see how they do moving forward. But let's move on to Boston. So they're also looking okay. Like Charlie McAvoy was a late scratch on Saturday with a non-COVID illness. A lot of these going around, like I said. So he'll probably be fine. Managers actually get a convenient stash, right? The Bruins don't play until Wednesday. So now you get to stash McAvoy in your IR, grab Sam Steele for Monday, Tuesday, then drop Steele for McAvoy. There you go. Get him on Wednesday. Hopefully he'll be back by then. So I would hold off on your rush ads of like Mike Riley or Matt Grisham. Like I could dig into like who was on the power play with McAvoy, but who cares? I think he's going to be back. Reminder that Brad Marchand will also be back on Wednesday after serving that 3-game suspension for slew-footing Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Let's summarize what Taylor Hall did in the meantime, because we were all like, okay, this is a great opportunity for Taylor Hall to take Marchand's spot on line 1 and power play 1. How'd he do? He had one power play assist in 3 games, 4 shots in each of those games. So that's good. Like he was shooting, nothing went in. I'm sure if he had a goal on one of those 12 shots, we'd maybe be telling a bit of a different story. But at this point, it just feels like So Taylor Hall continues his disappointing season. Not even a blip when Marchand was out and he got better deployment. Hall's now at 11 points in 21 games, which is like a 40-something point pace. Not even high 40s, low 40s point pace. Now he's back to playing with Coyle and Craig Smith. I'm sure he's going to be off the top power play because Foligno's there at the net front. So, back to me being like totally bored by Taylor Hall.
Yeah, we're both very bored by Taylor Hall. I added him in one league just to see what he could do, and it's a limited moves for the year league. I'm just like, okay, I don't know how much bang I'll get for this move by the end of the season, so I'll see what Hall does. And like you said, he didn't do much, even with increased deployment. Taylor Hall is still a snoozer in a lot of formats. Like, I will say, he's not quite as bad as he looks. Like Hall isn't even shooting 2.5%, which is a third of what we'd reasonably expect for him to shoot. He's usually in the 7.5%, 8% range, and his points participation is low. It's just 45% at 5-on-5. That's a shadow of what we'd normally expect. It's crazy that Taylor Hall is playing on like a second line, and he's not even involved on more than half of the goals they're scoring. So something is strange. And I think I'm still giving Hall the benefit of the doubt. I'm thinking it's variance. His on-ice shooting percentage is also below 6%. So not a lot of goals are going in. Not a lot of shots are going in while Hall is on the ice. So this is all to say, not that I think Hall is amazing and incredible and has a lot of dormant, exciting value. Just to say, I don't think Hall is this 43-point pace player he's been so far through the season. But I totally agree with you, Elon, that in this limited role, like Taylor Hall is seeing 2 minutes per night less at 5-on-5 compared to last season. He's seeing less power play time. 55 points seems like all I feel I can reasonably expect from Taylor Hall. He's still playing well, but he's not in a spotlight role, and that's just going to put a limit on exactly what he's able to accomplish.
Yeah, and like 55 points, but it's like there's different types of 55 points, right? Like maybe he'll be a steady, get you up to 55 points, but like that ceiling isn't there. Even like a Sonny Milano, who obviously isn't the talent that Taylor Hall is. At least it's exciting, and he's going to have potential for like big multi-point games because he's playing with, Zegras, and he's like shown this year that he's gone on good runs. Like I take him over Taylor Hall at this point. So just to say, like, unless you just want to be super steady and boring and never make any moves, a super limited moves league, and you already have Hall, I guess hold on. But otherwise, yeah, just like to me, it's like there's no upside there. So what's the point of holding someone that'll just maybe get you a point every 2 games or 3? Okay, let's go to Hall's former team, Buffalo, which is like a very disappointing situation for them with their goalies, right? So Craig Anderson is still month to month with his lingering upper body injury. Then Dustin Tokarski had a few good games, a bunch of bad games. Now he's on the COVID protocol as of Thursday. So the Sabres traded to Chicago some future considerations to get Malcolm Subban, and he got the game versus Carolina on Saturday where he was terrible. He stopped only 19 of 25 shots, and then he got injured. So this team that went into the season with arguably the worst goaltending in the league is somehow, even like we already expected them to be bad with their goalies, they're now down to their 4th stringer, I guess, in Aaron Dell, who's been totally brutal himself in his 7 appearances. He's 0-5 with a 4.52 GAA, 872 save percentage. So I guess at this point, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen will get called up from the minors. Not that he's been having a good season himself. He has an 888 save percentage in 12 games with the Rochester Americans so far in the AHL. So Brian, would you have the guts? Let's say you need a game from a goalie and you see that UPL is slated to get a start for the Sabres. They play next versus Anaheim on Tuesday. Let's say you need a goalie on Tuesday. You have an open spot. Are you streaming in Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen for that game, or are you thinking that you're going to get blown up like Carter Hart did today against Tampa?
Ask yourself, would you have started Dustin Tokarski? And that's your answer for whether you'd start Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I will at least add some context that Buffalo, I don't think is the problem here. I think it's been their goalies. So we'll see if Luukkonen is the problem or if he can keep up with the team that is providing reasonably good defense. If you're not familiar with UPL and you're wondering who he is, he did show up for his first 4 games of NHL action last year, had a .906 save percentage in 4 starts, but only one of those 4 starts were quality starts, which is not a great mark. That means he blew you up or hurt you in some way in 3 of the 4 starts that Luukkonen got. And like I said, it's not even tough sledding as a Buffalo goalie. That's not the reason to be worried about Luukkonen. Buffalo looks average defensively, mid-pack. As a team on the whole, they just have no good goalies. What they are succeeding in doing in Buffalo is they're making a goalie graveyard of guys that you, like maybe I'm talking specifically to you, Elon, once hoped may amount to something. You've got Aaron Dell, you've got Tokarski, you've got Malcolm Subban, who also just arrived. So I'm not going to totally throw him under the bus, but I've also never thought that Malcolm Subban, from what we've seen, is a goalie at the NHL level. Maybe a backup, but I'm not even sure he's that. And the thing with UPL is we don't know who he is yet, but Buffalo, I think, believe it or not, I know this doesn't go with the reputation, but I think the Sabres will give any of their goalies a decent shot to succeed. So I'm going to try out Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen if I don't have too much to lose. Of course, Buffalo isn't great, and they're not going to offer much run support. So wins are going to be hard to come by if that's what you're chasing. But I'm not ruling out the possibility that a goalie in Buffalo can put up half-decent numbers playing behind the defense that the Sabres are providing. And that's why if you're feeling up for the risk that's inherent in starting a guy who's had a bad year in the AHL and has no NHL track record, then you can go ahead and take a chance on Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
Yeah, I guess so. I know people have talked about him as this like prospect that they're somewhat excited about, but yeah, not a great situation. But if you need a goalie, there you go. There's a name from the Keeping Karlsson guys telling you this is a goalie that might get some starts over the next week, especially if Tokarski stays in the COVID protocol for long. Since we're on Buffalo, you brought up how they're not giving you much run support. When they are giving run support, it's often been Jeff Skinner who's been scoring. I'm going to mea culpa right here. Like, I believe last year I used to make fun of you every time you'd mention him. And I'd be like, this guy stinks. Get over it, Brian. Like, stop trying to make Jeff Skinner happen. Just like Ben tried to make fun of Lewis in the last short shift, saying that he's trying to make Kyle Okposo happen. And we'll get to him in just a sec. But Skinner's been great. He's got 3 goals and 3 assists in his last 5 games. He's taking 3+ shots in most of his games lately. He's on the top line in top power play with Thompson and Olofsson. Casey Middlestat has also been on the top power play. So yeah, I can't say anything bad about Jeff Skinner. I added him in one of my leagues, and I don't think I'm going to drop him anytime soon. He's not my worst player. Speaking of Casey Middlestat, by the way, he scored in his return. So here's a small piece of happy news in the injury episode. Middlestat scored in his return on Thursday. Nothing versus Carolina on Saturday, but he scored 3 shots. He's on the top power play. Like I said, he's been playing with Gergensons and Asplund at even strength. It doesn't seem that great, but like, what line does seem that great when you look at the names in Buffalo? In fact, a line that has been doing okay is the Kyle Okposo line. Okposo's been playing with Cousins and a guy named Brett Murray, and Cousins is now on a 6-game point streak after his power play assist on Saturday. So I know Ben is going to be really mad for me asking this, because according to what I'm hearing on short shifts, he thinks that Kyle Okposo was the absolute worst, just kind of how like I used to talk about Jeff Skinner. But at this point, Brian, I'm just curious. I got to just ask now, like, because he keeps getting points, right? I'm ready to stop thinking about Kyle Okposo because I feel like he's a guy from 5 years ago that used to be good on the Islanders, but here he is getting points. Let's say you have him in free agency and Casey Middlestat, who's the bit of a higher pedigree prospect at the moment, who has scored a goal recently and is on the top power play. Who would you take if you wanted to saber between Middlestat and Okposo?
I would take Kyle Okposo. My initial answer was neither, but Kyle Okposo is on a run, and at least, unlike Middlestat, who's playing with no one really, at least Okposo has Dylan Cousins as someone to play with that is possibly good. But Okposo definitely deserves a shout out for putting up really his best underlying offensive rates that we've seen since Okposo left Long Island after the 2015-16 season and coming to Buffalo as this like heralded free agent, big acquisition, going to help turn the team around. Man, like what a sad time in Buffalo. Kyle Okposo has been there this whole time through I was going to say ups and downs, but it's more like downs and down furthers. So way to go, Kyle Okposo. We actually just had someone in our Discord server, like while we were recording, Gus, asking in our patrons only server, if you cover up Okposo's name, wouldn't he be a must add? He was going to drop Okposo in exchange for Jarvis and is now trying to decide if he should swap out Kyle Okposo for Seth Jarvis. Elon, where are you on that?
I don't know. Yeah, I go with Okposo. I guess he's on a good run. Who knows, right? These like Okposo, Jarvis. These are like streamers, right? So it's not a big deal either way. Like obviously in the long run, you'll want Seth Jarvis in the keeper league. That's a whole different story. But like like also with Okposo, don't forget, it's like I remember back when he went to Buffalo. Then he like had some terrible injury issues. I don't even remember what it was, but it was something that kept him out for a year. And then he was like, he couldn't practice.
Like entirely normal or physical.
Yeah, it was like weird stuff going on in his body that didn't sound comfortable. So anyway. Maybe he's finally back to full health. I don't want to read too much into it. And again, I don't expect Kyle Okposo to be someone you're going to add and he's going to stay on your roster all season.
Even if he is finally back to full health, he's also 6 years older than how old he was then. But I hear what you're saying completely. Okposo and Jarvis are both it could be even odds between them. He'll be 34 in April. But I cut you off. What were you saying?
No, I'm just saying that for now, I'm going to ride the hot streak. He seems to be doing well, and we'll see what happens. But it's Buffalo. You're probably not going to want to lean too hard on any Buffalo player that's not on that top line, which is Skinner, Olofsson, and Tage Thompson. And even them, I'm not saying there's a super high ceiling, but I take Skinner over Taylor Hall. That's going to be my benchmark for this episode. Would I take the player over? I'd take Hall over Okposo, but I'd take Skinner over Hall.
That's great because I was actually just about to ask you whether you I had that in my prep notes as a question to ask you, Skinner or Hall. I appreciate what you're saying. And the funny bit about Jeff Skinner is that his own performance doesn't seem to have changed much from last year or the year before or the year before. This is the story of Jeff Skinner. His minutes change, his shooting percentage fluctuates, but he never really seems to change much himself. But this year, Skinner's seeing more minutes, more of a power play role, healthy shooting percentage, and variance that isn't crazy, but it's on the side of friendly rather than frustrating. And that's it for Jeff Skinner. It's he's the same guy he's been all this time, but he's just getting more opportunities. 7 goals and 7 assists. Last year, Skinner had 7 goals and 7 assists in 53 games. This year, Skinner has 8 goals and 8 assists in just 24 games. So I think Skinner is worth rostering as a guy with 25 goal, 55 point upside. And that's why I was going to ask you Skinner versus Hall. And honestly, I think I'm inclined to agree with you, Elon, that I would take Jeff Skinner because he's hotter. Heck, I might even take Okposo over Hall. It's just a stream, right?
Yeah, I guess.
So I'm just looking for someone who's hot.
Sure. I mean, to me, they're in kind of different levels. But yeah, if I guess if you're just dropping Hall anyways, if you've yet to get me to just predict who I think will be better for the rest of the season, then you heard my ranking. But yeah, give me the guy on the top line, top power play, and that's Jeff Skinner, not Taylor Hall. Okay, so let's not talk about Taylor Hall anymore unless we're just going to dunk on. The thing is, the more we dunk on him, the more likely it is that he's going to get a hat trick in the next game on Wednesday and make us look dumb. But I guess that's the way the business goes. So let's go to Calgary now, another team that has been pretty lucky with injuries. They're not only fine with injuries, they're just fine overall. And by fine, I mean amazing. They've had such a good season so far. Their win over the Ducks on Friday was their 7th in their last 8 games. They're playing Vegas today. Looks like the game, hasn't started yet. So the people listening will find out if they have added another win to their record. But yeah, I guess the player that I wanted to just quickly mention is Oliver Shillington. Went cold. He was hot. We were talking about him on the show before. Remember, this is the guy whose name is spelled Kylington, but it's actually pronounced Shillington. And he was on this major hot streak. So we talked about him on the show. We said that it's looking good, but it's probably not going to last. And then you gave a lot of reasons why it was unsustainable. And then, he went cold like we expected. But, he's started to heat up again. He's got an assist in each of his last 3 games going into today, up to 15 points in 23 games on the season now. That's a 53-point pace. And, when he had his previous hot streak and it started with 3 games, I didn't even pay him any mind. And then it just kept going and going. So now that this is starting again, I don't know. I just want to know, if we're into him a little more. Brian, right now, are you into him after these 3 games more so than you were, 3 games into his previous hot streak? Or do you still feel the same way that this is just kind of some totally unsustainable thing and he's not of interest to you as more than a 30-point defenseman?
I'm going to answer you, Elon, I promise. But just for the word and linguistics nerds out there, I did do a little research this time into why it's pronounced Shillington instead of Kylington. So do you know that the K in Swedish can be a hard K or a soft K, and whether it's hard or soft depends on the vowel that follows the K. It's almost like a C in English. And so if the sound in Shillington, like if there's that Y vowel after the K, it's soft. So there you go.
There we go. Mystery solved.
Thanks to Stephen McConey at Swedish Language Blog for that information. Stay tuned for more Swedish Language Blog content.
Ooh, you got
Not
more
this
for us?
episode. Actually,
Okay.
not this episode. Maybe
Okay.
just some other day. Okay, but we want to talk about the hockey player Oliver Shillington, who has just 4 shots in this 3-game streak. No blocks or hits of consequence either. And so, like, I'm looking at him and I'm not excited. I see that Shillington's 5-on-5 points participation rates are up above 70%, which is crazy. Like, that's what you'd expect from a pretty good forward. A defenseman, the best defensemen, are in on 40 or 45% of the goals scored while they're on the ice. And Shillington, historically himself, has only been in on 35%. So he's doubling his points participation so far. And, another theory is, well, Calgary's so good, they're scoring a lot of goals. So maybe Shillington's getting rich off of that. And actually, no. Like, the offense, while Shillington's on the ice, isn't substantially better than what we've seen Shillington get time with before. So I think there's a couple things going on here. First, lots is going right for Shillington, but I also did put it to the Calgary Flames, the close Calgary Flames watchers in our patrons only Discord server. There's another shout out for the server, patreon.com/KeepingKarlsson. I swear, there's good info there though. Thanks to Stefan, Sean, and Zelnox for sharing their takes and thoughts on Oliver Shillington as someone who's watched him more often than me. And basically, the vibe that they have is that Shillington's offense has actually always been a part of his game. We just haven't seen it because he's struggled to figure out the rest of the NHL game. So Shillington actually does have this latent offensive upside, but wasn't really able to put a full enough game together that he was able to show it off. And now maybe he is kind of rounding into form, which is more exciting than I would have known before asking these. I mean, he was projected like in his draft class to have talent. Like Stefan pointed out, he's projected top 10 in his draft class because of the offensive upside. And he's really, and Sean added that, he was always making a decent pass, but then following it up with like 4 or 5 errors that followed up and washed it out. But this season, Shillington seems to have found his game, maybe thanks to the style that Calgary's playing under Daryl Sutter. It's working for him, or he's matured into the role, which is great, which is starting to make me think, Elon, just to tie this all into a bow, that maybe Shillington, while he's overperforming right now, I don't expect him, I said a few weeks ago, maybe 30, 35 points. Maybe it's time to have like Mikhail Sergachev type expectations for Oliver Shillington. Maybe a little less power play production, but maybe 40 points is in reach for Shillington as a season-long pace if he has found his overall game and can start showing these flashes of offensive upside that were following him into the draft.
Yeah, and plus there's always the possibility, I'm not saying I've heard that this is going to happen, but it's a rare team, right, where the top power play defenseman is performing a lot worse offensively than some other player who's on the second power play, sometimes not getting any power play time, but like maybe at some point Rasmus Andersson gets bumped and Shillington gets a shot at the top power play, and then all bets would be off. And I'm not saying I know for sure that's going to happen. It probably won't, but imagine if it did and you had Shillington on your team, how excited would you be? So just something to, keep in mind or to dream about at night if you've added Shillington and you're hoping for even more. Let's go next to Carolina. So Andrei Svechnikov missed Saturday's game against Buffalo with an upper body injury. He joined Tony DeAngelo and Brett Pesce on the shelf. They're both in the COVID protocol. So, not great, but Carolina still won. So who cares? They were against Buffalo. If you want to try to keep up with the Canes lines, because every single episode they change, here's how they looked on Saturday. They had Aho, Teravainen, and Niederreiter. Then Trocheck with Natchez and Seth Jarvis. And then there was kind of the rest, I guess. What's that guy's name? Oh, no. What's the guy's name from the Habs again?
Sorry, I wasn't following.
Oh, you're not listening? Okay.
What are you talking about?
What's the name of the guy on the guy that came from the Habs? Why am I blanking on his name?
Came from the Habs to where? Kotkaniemi?
Yeah, that's him. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I should mention Kotkaniemi is in that bottom 6. He's been doing pretty well lately, for what it's worth. But anyways, okay, those are the lines right now. Obviously, that sounds really good for Nino Niederreiter. Generally, I just want the guy playing with Aho, and so it's good for Teravainen to be with him. It's good for Nino. Nino had a goal and an assist in that game versus Buffalo on Saturday. That brought him to 5 points in his last 5 games. Carolina, by the way, plays 4 games next week, so who knows how long these lines will last. But with Svechnikov out, there's like fewer options of people to play with Sebastian Aho, so maybe Niederreiter gets to hold that spot, and he becomes very interesting to me. Then on defense, there were were no power plays on Saturday, but Jacob Slavin was the power play 1 quarterback in the loss to Ottawa in the previous game for Carolina, and he actually picked up a power play assist. So with D'Angelo and Brett Pesce out, and if they stay out for this next 4-game week, or even a couple games from it, got to imagine that Jacob Slavin becomes someone that you want to stream in for the short term, a la like a Sam Steele. But like, this Carolina power play is a good place to be, and Slavin has produced in the past. I recall when he was in that spot, though I think it was like there was a couple seasons ago when he went on this amazing hot run and he was on the top power play, but he actually wasn't even getting power play points. But either way, it's still a good space to be where you'd expect that there's a good chance for him to get points. So he's interesting to me in the short term. And I'll also mention one more player and then just throw to you about the Canes. But I got to mention Vincent Trocheck, who we brought up last week as this guy on a cold streak, someone who's disappointing everyone. And guess what? He ended that 8-game pointless streak. It helps to go against Malcolm Subban, I guess, because he had a goal and 2 assists in that game against Buffalo. So I'd be curious to know if you think like this is an indication that, all right, it's time. Engines are revved. Time for Trocheck to turn it around. Or is this just like he had a good game against Buffalo, but let's see what he can do aside from that. So in conclusion, Niederreiter with Aho. I like that. Slavin, top power play. I like that. Nice to see Trocheck do something.
All right. In order, Niederreiter, I also like that. I don't know how long he'll be there. Nobody does, because Carolina is blending their lines often this year. But Niederreiter is a nice stream while he's up there on the top line. He did well there last year in spurts. So why not take him for a stream if you have a spot for him on a night that Niederreiter is playing? Then I think you mentioned, I lost track of what order you went in. I'll go to Trocheck, who is himself on an interesting line with Natchez and Seth Jarvis. And good for Trocheck that he's in a better spot now than he was in last time we talked about him. So that's a start. I still definitely have concerns about Trocheck's power play role. We talked about it the last time we talked about Trocheck, how he's still on that top power play, but he's not involved in the same way he once has. There's been a change to how Carolina runs their unit, and it has taken work away from Trocheck, and that's why he's not putting up points on the top power play that we've seen him put up in the past. So I think his ceiling is still lower than we would have wanted because of that, even though he's still on the top unit. Good for Trocheck to be relevant, being like playing on a clear top 6 line, but he still hasn't fully reclaimed the value that he had in the season's opening weeks when we were like, okay, top 6, top power play role. Now it's like top 6 and like, top power play role. And then Jacob Slavin, you mentioned Elon, he did go on a run. I think it was last season, maybe the one before, where, he was taking over the top power play, and then he won this crazy tear at 5-on-5 that was like very variance driven and not putting up any power play points. And it's like, do we really like Slavin because he's doing all this at 5-on-5 and on the top power play? My answer now is the same as it was then, which is that no, I don't love Slavin a whole lot more. I actually legitimately thought Carolina was going to keep running 5 forwards when we saw them do it briefly right when D'Angelo went on the shelf for the first time. But I see Slavin as not an offensive type. He's lucked into scoring runs before, and he's not someone I'm really excited for. So if you're looking for the Carolina power play quarterback, and that's why you're adding Slavin, honestly, I might look elsewhere, including an option in Montreal that we'll get to in a little bit.
No way. You're going to take Cale Clegg over Slavin? Clegg is going to get benched, or he's going to take 0 shots. Come on, that's bad advice, in my opinion, respectfully.
Well, it depends on the blocks and hits and how much that matters, because Slavin does some decent peripherals work that Clegg doesn't. But if you're looking for power play production from a power play quarterback, I would rather, do you want to just make a little bet on the air right now?
Sure.
Farmer's bet, friendly non-wager, that over the next week, power play points per game, Clegg is higher than Slavin.
Why not just points per game? Why can't we just say who's better?
Okay. Well, because I'm looking at power play production.
I'm talking about who people should add. I'm saying I think Slavin is going to be much better than Cale Clegg.
If I'm looking for points, I would take the chance on Clegg. Slavin's boring.
All right, so this will be a fun bet. Slavin's not as boring.
I deserve odds on this, by the way.
Well, you're the one who brought it up. You can't offer a bet, then we agree to it, then you say I want odds. Also, you made perfectly clear to make it clear to everyone that it's not for money, so I don't think odds will really matter. You could get more cred. I guess we might as well just go to Montreal if it's okay to go out of order since you already brought it up. So yeah, the reason why we're talking about Cale Clegg is that Jeff Petry's out with an upper body injury, but even whatever, maybe he has already been suffering from this injury all season, or who knows, he's been a shell of his former self. He wasn't even on the top power play in Montreal. But of course, Chris Weidman was also injured for a bit. Maybe he's back. Sami Niku is someone that we haven't been recommending when he's gotten on the top power play. I don't know. So they've got some other players on the top power play. No one's done anything. And yeah, LA waived Cale Clegg and the Habs claimed him. So Brian thinks that this is going to mean something. I'm almost positive it won't. But we'll have to see, Brian. So do you have any more reasoning for why you're interested in Cale Clegg as the new, I guess, Sami Niku or Chris Weidman or Jeff Petrie in Montreal?
Yeah. I mean, maybe I am overly excited about Cale Clegg. I just feel like he's worth looking at. And Sami Niku, I'm reading this quote right now from someone whose Twitter handle, Marco D'Amico, aka at the Hockey Expert, who was on a Habs radio show saying Sami Niku has the better shot and Cale Clegg is better in transition. So I don't know. Okay, I
cancel the bet.
I cancel the bet. Go Slavin. I hope you didn't make any. I hope no one acted on that before hearing the follow up.
The next 5 minutes.
I'm interested in Cale Clegg. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
If you're looking for a power play quarterback, I'm more interested in Cale Clegg.
Then he might potentially be one, probably not. And if he is, it's like one of the places that there's no success happening this year. But sure, some reason for interest, I guess. He couldn't hold the job in LA while Doughty was out, but maybe he can do it in Montreal. So I guess, Brian, we've got a lot of teams to go here. We're back still on Chicago next. But before we get to that, I guess let's take a little break. And actually, we've got a sponsor to thank, not with a pre-tape, but with you and I talking about a new friend of the show. And those are a site, and that's a site that I hadn't heard of before we heard about them here, but it's looking pretty good. Oh, I don't even know what I'm doing here. Okay.
I'm trying to find the copy. Where is it?
It's down below Dallas. Okay.
And are we going to go back to Montreal?
Yes.
Okay, great.
All right, so Brian, we've got still a whole bunch of teams to go. We've only finished Carolina, and we wanted to go through the whole league. So we'll see at what point we have to go into a hurry-up offense here. But in the meantime, let's just take a quick break to thank a couple of sponsors for this week's episode of Keeping Karlsson, starting with our new friends over at TickPick. And that's with a T. The temperatures outside have been dropping, which of course means NHL season is like well underway. Of course, if you didn't realize that NHL season is well underway, then I'm not sure what podcast you think you're listening to. But yeah, there's no need to exhaust yourself searching all over the internet for tickets to see your favorite hockey team play, because TickPick, that's TickPick, is the original no-fee ticket site and the only one you'll ever need for your go-to for all tickets for NHL hockey, concerts, NFL, NBA, whatever. Go to TickPick and they'll sell you a ticket to go to the game. You know what, Brian? I personally just started to realize that I've never seen Alex Ovechkin play, and I'm going to hate myself if I don't see Ovi score one of the goals that's going to be in the huge collection of goals that will eventually break Gretzky's record. I need to go. We've been talking with Ben and Lewis in our side chat about how we might go to a game in Montreal in April. Patrons, let us know if you're in Montreal and you want to come join us for this exciting game where Washington's going to play the Habs. I think I'm going to go. But anyway, I'm very excited now that we have a site here with a really good deal, because I would love to go see Ovi play. And I think that anyone should go see Ovi play whenever they can, because this is going to be an opportunity you're going to want for the rest of your life. But anyways, TickPick, by the way, has gotten rid of...
Why don't I take it from there?
Okay, sure.
Okay. So you'll talk about having seen Ovi play. And while, it gets really exciting to start looking for tickets to a hockey game to see Alex Ovechkin or any of your favorite players play, but then you get all those service fees that are so freaking annoying and turn the cost into something inexplicable and surprising. But TickPick got rid of all those awful service fees that those other ticket sites charge. So they actually can guarantee the best prices in all of their NHL hockey tickets. That's right. TickPick guarantees the best prices. And if you don't believe them, if you can find better prices for the same seats on another ticket site, TickPick is going to give you 110% of the difference in the purchase price, which means, I think, Elon, you can tell me if I'm doing the math wrong, they're going to pay you to go to the game if you find a better deal.
No, they're going to pay you the difference. So if you found a ticket for $100 and then they were selling it for $90, no, wait, that's the other way. Sorry, let me see again. Well, not exactly, Brian. No, it's more like, let's say you see the ticket on TickPick for 110, but then you found it somewhere else for 100. That means that you found it for $10 cheaper. So they're going to give you, 10% of that and add it to your account. So you're going to make a buck. So that's how it works. But hey, they're matching the price and they're even giving you a little something. Not all sites. I don't know any other site that's going to do that. Most sites will be like, fine, buy it from them. I don't care. But TickPick, they're going to try to give you the best site. So yeah, give it a try. Go to tickpick.com/Karlsson. As in Eric, not John, not Lucas, Karlsson, tickpick.com/Karlsson, and go see Ovi and McDavid and all those players that one day you're going to feel really bad if your grandkids are asking you, why didn't you ever see those great players while you were alive? And you're like, oh, no, I didn't feel like it. It's like, these are once-in-a-lifetime players, okay? All right, Brian, we'll just cut to now another quick ad break, and then we'll be going straight through all the rest of the teams, D through Z. I guess there's no Z team, through W. So we'll be back in just a sec. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. Okay, we are back and we're going, I said D, but no, we're still on C. We're on Chicago now. So no big injury news of players that we care about for fantasy purposes. I guess Conor Murphy, he's someone who used to be someone we cared about for fantasy purposes last year. He went on a run where he was getting some points and also taking shots and hits and blocks. He was a good peripherals guy. He got taken out by a hit by Alex Ovechkin, who I was just mentioning before in the ad. So he's on the concussion protocol. But anyway, that's not good for Chicago, right? They already are weak on D. Now they lose Conor Murphy. Tyler Johnson is also up, but we've forgotten about him. So I'll just mention quickly about Chicago. Brandon Hegel got an assist on the Kane first period goal versus the Rangers on Saturday, and today he's scored a power play goal. So yeah, he's sticking in this good deployment. Not to say that he's like a sure thing to get you points all the time, but like definitely someone that's interesting to stream while he's playing with Patrick Kane. Of course, the player that I want to ask you about here is Seth Jones, who is quietly creeping up towards a point per game. Like he had his third multi-point game in 4 games on Saturday. He's up to now 3 goals and 18 assists for 21 points in 23 games now. That's going into today. Chicago, like I said, scored a power play goal today. I'm just going to have a guess. Yep, Seth Jones had a power play assist today. So this guy just keeps on producing. He's currently on a 75-point pace, or I guess higher now that he just got this point today. His career high is 60 points with Columbus back in 2017-18. Do you think that Seth Jones is going to beat his career high this year and break 60? You're muted.
Sorry. Okay. I think he could finish right around that. And I'm not getting down with point per game Seth Jones. And I'll tell you why. First off, he's participating in 80% of the goals scored while he's on the ice at 5-on-5 versus 45% in his career. I mean, we just talked about those numbers with Shillington, and Jones, is on the good end of points participation at 45% in his career, but 80% is just completely unreasonable at 5-on-5. So that's one reason why Seth Jones is pacing for nearly a point per game. Another reason that I'm not sure I believe in it, or I'm actually sure I don't believe in Jones pacing for a point per game, is because the 5-on-5 offense in Chicago is actually no better than the lines he spent time on the ice with in Columbus. And with those lines, Seth Jones was not able to do a whole lot at 5-on-5, and I don't see that changing significantly just because the jersey has changed. But being on a clear top power play unit is one thing that is huge for Seth Jones, and the reason why I am saying I think he can come close or inch past his career high, as opposed to being like a 45-ish point guy that he's been in Columbus for the last few years. In Columbus, Seth Jones had like a 50 to 55% share of the Blue Jackets power play time, and he was on kind of power play units. In Chicago, Seth Jones is seeing a 73% share of the team's power play time. So that's like no doubter top power play quarterback numbers. And the top unit in Chicago is pretty darn good. And I think that bodes really well for Seth Jones. So trying to make an analogy between the last time we saw Seth Jones hit what was his career high, that 60-point season, those fueled by 24 power play points. And this season, Seth Jones is on pace for 21 power play points. And that's with just 1 power play point going into tonight in his last 15 games, which is really sad and bound to improve as it has already started to turn around. So I think Seth Jones, like, to make the long answer short, I still think he gets about a 60-point pace. I think that's the right expectation. I think Jones's 5-on-5 production is going to slow down to being more pedestrian, but his power play production is going to pick back up, which might help Jones pace for 25, 30 power play points the rest of the season, which would be a reason why I could be convinced to stretch Jones to like a 65-point pace the rest of the year. But that's as far as I'd go So I think it's more likely he finishes below 65 than over it, but certainly in the conversation, I could see him touching or getting just past his career high.
Okay, yeah, nothing to sneeze at. Like, I don't know if I was expecting you to say that he's like going to be anywhere near point per game, but he's on an amazing run, and it looks like even if he only is pacing for like 55 the rest of the season, he might have already set himself up with enough of a head start that he might still beat his career high. So great season so far for Seth Jones. I've got him in a dynasty league actually with the option to drop him before the long-term 9.5 million per year forever contract kicks in. So it's going to be a tricky decision this summer because I traded for him kind of thinking it'll be more like a rental for this year because there's no way I want to take on this contract. But if he's going to be like even just a 65-point defenseman, I say that's pretty rare in the NHL. That's pretty valuable. That's not someone you just drop in most situations. So anyways, Maddie and I will figure that out over the summer. Colorado, they've got some tough ones. This one sucks. Okay, so first of all, Nazem Kadri was dinged up versus Montreal on Thursday. Didn't play Saturday versus Ottawa in the 6-5 overtime loss. By the way, I'm saying dinged up. I don't mean to just be flippant. Like that's the quote I read from the coach. So he'll probably be back soon. So Cale Makar also didn't play on Saturday with an upper body injury. Bowen Byram also didn't play. He's been out with a head injury. So I don't know the status of Cale Makar at this point. Definitely, this is like we're giving you like our up-to-date news, but I think before you make any big decisions, check the latest news. We have a Twitter account at Game Day News NHL that Shams helps us keep up to date and does an amazing job. So definitely if he sees any news about Cale Makar, I'm sure there's going to be a tweet there. In the meantime, Devon Toews played 31 minutes and 17 seconds in the game versus Ottawa on Saturday, the overtime loss, and he was great. He also was on the top power play. He picked up an assist on the Landeskog power play goal, also scored the tying goal late in the third. Obviously, Makar and Byram could be back at any time, but man, you've got to wonder like how good Toews would be if he got this power play one opportunity. Like if for some reason like Makar was out long term, like I wonder if you start to wonder with these Colorado players. Like, and I don't mean to disrespect Cale Makar, he's obviously amazing, but it's like a really sweet situation to be in. You wonder how good like any of these talented defensemen would be, and Toews seems to be really talented even without this power play opportunity. Toews is up to 13 points in 12 games now. Last season he broke out for 31 points in 53 games. That's a 48-point pace. Do you think he's going to beat that this year? Like even like assuming Makar comes back and Toews isn't on the top power play, do you think he can approach or beat or like be kind of the same? Because that's amazing for a player. It's very rare for a player to have like around 50 points not on the top power play as a defenseman. But Toews did it last year and he's looking really great this year so far.
He's looking really great this year, and Devon Toews also looked really good last year. Which is fantastic. I'm not expecting Toews to quarterback the top unit in Colorado, and I don't know that he beats last year's pace, which was what was it, like 55 points. But I think Toews can get approach last year's pace and maybe equal it. I don't see reason to believe he's taking a step beyond it. But Toews looked really good last year, and Toews still looks good this year. So I think I'm really just saying, yeah, Toews looks good. I think 45 to 50 points is the right range to expect him, even without a power play role. It's nice to be in Colorado. There are a lot of goals to go around, and Toews is pretty good at starting them. Remember back when he was in Long Island, he had a chance to quarterback the top unit, and because he failed there, it doesn't mean he's bad. I see that now just as a sign that, yeah, he has some offensive upside and skill. He's he's got that element to his game, and he's using it well in Colorado at even strength.
Yeah, Devon Toews, man. Definitely, I take him over Jacob Slavin, no question about it. Also, if he is available in your league, I would just grab him now, probably like regardless, but especially because we don't know yet if Cale Makar is going to be out for a little while. And if he is on that top power play while Makar is out, that's huge. Then you want him more than like most defensemen in the league. Well, that's the case. By the way, big thanks to Mikko Rantanen for putting up a goose egg in a 5-goal game versus Ottawa. A couple goals. Maybe I'd be beating Ben this week instead of losing and falling to 4-4 on the year in the couple. So yeah, I'm being sarcastic. No thanks to you, Mikko Rantanen. I spent a lot of money on you in the Tier 1 auction draft, and that really was disappointing. So bummer. But okay, let's go to Columbus now. Patrick Laine is still out. It was told to be 4 to 6 weeks with an oblique strain back on November 5th. So now it's been like 4 weeks, which means we're now within the range of 4 to 6 weeks. So maybe there will be an update soon and we'll see Patrick Laine back. That would be cool. Also, all the goalies are out currently, or they were. Like Korpisalo and Merzlikins were both sick last week. So that led to Daniil Tarasov getting a couple games where he was really great. Despite taking 2 losses to Dallas and Washington, he had a .926 save percentage in those appearances. I see that Columbus has also played today. and they won 6-4 over San Jose. And Merzlikins was the goalie. So I guess Tarasov, probably before long, he'll go back to the minors once Korpisalo's healthy. But I didn't really know anything about this goalie, so just wanted to mention him. Brian, do you know who this guy is? Maybe someone to watch. Like, Korpisalo is an unrestricted free agent after this season. So this Daniil Tarasov, I'd imagine, is next in line to at least be the backup of Merzlikins. And who knows, you know how Columbus sometimes likes to play even their backup goalie quite often. So maybe someone that's going to get more mentions on Keeping Karlsson next year.
Yeah, Daniil Tarasov seems like he's in line to be the backup in Columbus. Joonas Korpisalo's proven himself to be unreliable. He's not great. That's not a surprise to us. We've been watching and seeing that he didn't seem to be cut out for an NHL starter role. Maybe Korpisalo can be a backup in the NHL, but I don't think he's a number one. And I think Tarasov might be a better backup at that. He was the third round pick of the Blue Jackets back in 2017, 86th overall. 86th overall pick of the Columbus. Oh. He was a third round pick of the Columbus Blue Jackets back in 2017, 86th overall. Tarasov is 22 years old, which means he's 5 years younger than Merzlikins. And Merzlikins also has a 5-year extension kicking in next year at $5.4 million per year. So I expect Tarasov to be Elvis's backup for the duration of that time. Maybe someone who can grow into a timeshare with him, Elon, like you said, if, you know, somehow Columbus wants to swing the pendulum from Merzlikins being having a heavy workload to having a more equal one, Tarasov could benefit from that. But for him, there's just not a clear path to becoming a number one, like the straight up number one or even 1A, because that job is spoken for in Columbus for the next little while. But I think he is someone to keep an eye on, Tarasov, as someone who might be nice for a spot start coming up. He has a pretty decent track record and reputation, and I'm curious to see what he can do in the NHL. We might not see much of him this year, but yeah, I think he's reason to expect Korpisalo to not be re-signed by the organization.
Yeah, maybe even traded at the deadline if a team needs a goalie. Like, we've been talking about some different teams with goalie issues. I guess Buffalo doesn't really care. They got like Malcolm Subban for probably nothing, but there might be some teams that need a goalie, and maybe Korpisalo is now even more expendable. So since we're on Columbus, they just scored 6 goals today, so you've got to imagine their best player, Oliver Bjorkstrand. Nope, nothing. No points. Again, Brian, what is going on with Oliver Bjorkstrand? Patron Joel asked us to talk about him in our Discord, and I was like, yeah, you better believe it that I had him already slated to come on the show. He started the season really well. He was on such an amazing run. We were talking about, man, how great is Bjorkstrand? This guy's like a superstar. Now he only has 1 assist in his last 7 games now. Only 2 shots total in his previous 4 games going into today. Did he at least take a shot today? 1 shot? That's it? Oh my God, Brian, like, what's wrong with this guy? This is reminding me of Logan Couture last year, who was on this amazing run, then all of a sudden just completely fell off. And I remember you were speculating that maybe Couture was injured. Should we just speculate? Like, I don't want to just say that Bjorkstrand became bad. That would like change my whole perception of the world.
Yeah, you'd be so let down, wouldn't you, to hear that Oliver Bjorkstrand is actually bad after all the love we've thrown him on the pod over the years. And I am also trying to look for explanations, because this is weird. Guys like Bjorkstrand don't just go missing, especially someone who has a lot of shot volume. Like, something is weird with Bjorkstrand right now. You mentioned that he had just 2 goals in his last 4 games going into tonight. Still didn't do much tonight, although going to give him some credit. 26 seconds into the game tonight, Bjorkstrand hit the crossbar, which does not count as a shot on goal, but it is his NHL high 6th post that he's hit this season. So Bjorkstrand just inches away from having much better numbers. But what's going back to his shot totals, what's weirder than Bjorkstrand going into tonight having just 2 shots in his last 4 is that Bjorkstrand has only attempted 4 shots in his last 4 games going into tonight. For context, Bjorkstrand's generally good for 3 or 4 shot attempts per game. Tonight, I'm checking and I see that against San Jose, he did attempt 4 shots. So at least that part of it is back to normal, at least for one night for Bjorkstrand. But it's really strange that he took a vacation from trying to shoot, let alone actually succeeding with shots on goal. And like, you know, Logan Couture is someone who pops into my head too, because usually we see this sort of thing happen when a player's playing hurt. All of a sudden we know them to shoot this much, and suddenly the shots go away completely. So I actually went through Bjorkstrand's game log to see, okay, well, when did this start? 5 games back, just before Bjorkstrand stopped even attempting shots on goal. He played a season low 14 minutes and 46 seconds against the Canucks. And then I look even closer and I see Bjorkstrand landed on a lower line in the third period of the game for some reason. Ended up playing with Cole Sillinger and Gregory Hoffman. And that line with Bjorkstrand played just two very, very short shifts in the final 13 minutes of a 3-2 game. So I wonder if something happened in that game against Vancouver and Bjorkstrand barely played to finish it out. And since then, his time on ice has gone down a bit. He's barely attempting shots. So if I look at all that, I feel like maybe Oliver Bjorkstrand is a little hurt, which is some cause for panic if he does need to take some time off to heal, or if he doesn't take time off to heal and keeps playing through this. That's really frustrating because Bjorkstrand is a guy who gives you that nice floor of taking a whole bunch of shots and then the goals go in because he's good at shooting. But when he's not doing that or not healthy enough to do that, it's really frustrating. So if he is hurt, this is the best hypothesis I have now. I think I'd rather he just take a week off to get better rather than play through this for another 2 or 3 weeks while it heals even slower because he's in the lineup. And that's my take. So if you're a Bjorkstrand haver, like I am in a few leagues, I would just be waiting it out and hoping he takes a little break to get better.
Man, I feel like I'm so tempted to just go back when I edit the show and put like the serial theme music when you're like doing all this sleuthing and trying to figure out what's the reason why and find out, oh, there was a game like against Vancouver. And yeah, it's a very good theory. I wish also that he would just take the time off because then we can all stash him in our IRs and replace him with someone who's healthy and doing something. Here now, you don't want to drop all, like we're getting questions of people asking if they can drop Bjorkstrand. And it's like, it's making my head spin because I just don't want to say yes because I know how great he can be. But obviously this is a big intangible of if he's playing hurt. So I don't know. I guess if it was me, I'd give him more time. But, I gave Couture a significant amount of time last year, and eventually I did drop him, right? Because he just didn't get going yet. So I'm watching him closely now. Let's just say that. Like, he was, like, not on my radar at the start of this week. Now, like, he had, like, 3 games of no points. Now he's, like, significantly on my radar. And if, like, next week we come back on the show and still it's, like, hardly any shots, no points, like, nothing going on, then maybe we need to start discussing if we would drop him. But I personally, like, feel free if you want to drop him in your league, especially, a lot of these ad drop decisions are, like, if you could drop him and you don't think anyone else is going to add him, then what's the big deal? Fine. Then you could add someone else, and then once he gets going, add him back, no penalty. But if you're in a league where you're going to drop him and then everyone's going to use their top waiver priority to grab him and that's it for the season, I'd hold on. Like, a lot of times with these drop decisions, I actually like to think of it in terms of, like, am I giving a gift? Like, am I going to make someone excited when they see the drop that just happened in their league? And like, oh, I could get Bjorkstrand. If you think that someone's going to have that reaction, then probably you hold on or at least, like, try to trade him or something, right? But anyway, that's a bummer. Okay, let's go to Dallas. Not too much going on here. So John Klingberg was sick, missed Thursday's game, should be back Monday. Like I said, a lot of people getting sick. Also, Denis Gurianov was sick with likely the same illness. That's what I read. There might be a bug going around. So okay, that's a bummer, but I guess he'll be back. So yeah, aside from that, the Stars have been blessed with health pretty much, aside from, of course, Ben Bishop. We have no idea what's going on with him. So yeah, I don't really have any questions about Dallas. I will mention that they play 4 times next week. Rick Bowness said that he expects to play Holtby and Ettinger each 2 times. So nice to know you can just set your watch to, if either of them are in free agency, you're going to get 2 goalie starts, which is generally pretty good for a goalie stream to get 2 goalie starts in a week. So I like that.
Yeah, and the other silver lining to that news is Jake Ettinger has not been sent down yet, and he's going to play twice this week. I would love if Rick Bowness could also tell us which games, like if they're going to do 2 in a row each or alternate. Yeah. But I guess we can't be too choosy. At least we have this much info. So thanks, Rick.
Thanks. Of course, like one player has an amazing game, then the next one gets blown up, and then all of a sudden maybe the first one gets like 2 games in a row. Like I'm sure he's not going to be like, you can hold me to that. But yeah, that's the information that we have right now. Okay, Brian, let's go to Detroit. Huge shocker of the year here. Tyler Bertuzzi has found himself on the COVID protocol. The one player who's not vaccinated is on the COVID protocol, so he's going to be out all of next week. Robbie Fabry has taken over his spot on the top line and top power play. He scored a power play goal on Wednesday versus Seattle. Nothing on Saturday in the win over the Islanders. Got to be of interest, though, for a stream next week, especially since you can get his Tuesday, Thursday, Friday games and then you could drop him for someone else on the weekend. I always like when you have a player with a schedule like this. This is the kind of thing Dave talks about on Stream Scheme, right? Add Fabry, get 3 games of line 1 power play 1, and then Saturday, you drop him, you pick up a guy playing Saturday, Sunday, you just got a 5-game week. That's like, yeah, you can grab Sam Steele and get 5 games, or you can get 5 games this way and maybe get guys with higher potential. Of course, then you have to use 2 ads, and then you're going to have like a bunch of injuries, and then all of a sudden you're going to wish you didn't use 2 ads, you just added Sam Steele, so there's that complication. But Fabry is, of course, interesting to me right now, and I'll also just mention Pius Suter, current 5-game point streak after he assisted on Sider's OT winner yesterday. So, Brian, Pius Suter versus Robbie Fabry for next week. If you want to sweep 3 games in 5 days to start the week, classic case of deployment versus hot streak. Which way do you go?
I'm going Robbie Fabry here, who's I think one of this year's top streamer level players. Like, he's often available and usually rented out to someone in my leagues for 1, 2, maybe 3 games at a time, where he may produce once or twice, but not enough to hold a roster spot. So I think Fabry has earned that title of top level streamer, but not quite rosterable. And I think I would prefer him to Pius Suter.
Okay, that's fair. I think I agree with that. Let's go to Edmonton. Good news. Darnell Nurse, close to returning. In fact, I believe he has returned for today's game. It's right now 2-0 for LA in the second period. And let's see here how Darnell Nurse is doing, / if he's even playing. Yeah, he's in the lineup. He's got 2 shots, 2 blocks. You know, classic Darnell Nurse, leading the team in time on ice. So welcome back, Darnell Nurse. I'm sure everyone who has him is very excited to get him back in their lineups. Duncan Keith. Did he come back? I saw that he was close to returning also. He's not playing today. Who else? Cody Cece's on the COVID protocol, so I guess he's still out. So yeah, Edmonton has had some trouble with the defenseman getting injured, but at least they got Nurse back. Philip Broberg, remember, was called up. I believe it was when Nurse went down, so Broberg is still in the lineup. I'd imagine that won't last long. He's barely getting any ice time, so hopefully he's a good prospect long term, but doesn't look like he's worth anything this year. News came out on Friday that Kyler Yamamoto would play with McDavid in that game, and it was like also Yamamoto's parents would be in the stands watching, and I was like, oh, this is like all the signs point to a big game from Yamamoto, and then he did nothing, not even a point or a shot. Of course, I streamed him in for a game, and it was like just a total waste of a stream. And obviously no points today so far, and the lines are like back to normal. Apparently even Puljujärvi is back on the top line with McDavid right now. So Brian, all of our talk last week about, you know, if you should be concerned about him, like, you know, he was probably dropped in your free agency because he hasn't been doing much lately, but now he could potentially go off again, or maybe not. What else can I tell you about Edmonton? Mike Smith has been making progress. He could be back soon. In the meantime, Mikko Koskinen has been on a nice run, though he's letting these 2 goals today. So yeah, this is just a team where I don't really have many questions for you, but that's the sort of injury update on Edmonton. I don't think there's too much actionable here unless you disagree.
I'll just say that Kyler Yamamoto being up on the top line briefly was a really disappointing turn for him. I'm actually glad I'd already used my moves so that I didn't have to use one on getting disappointed by Yamamoto. I mean, landing back with Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins is not an awful spot for Kyler, but honestly, he's still not even looking good there. Like, I feel like it's reasonable to expect him to be like a 50-point guy from there. Currently, Yamamoto has just 6 points in 22 games, a 22-point pace. And honestly, I don't see any reason to expect things to get any better for him, unfortunately. I mean, maybe a little better, but not close enough to that 50-point pace that I'm adding him just because he's playing with Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins. I would love for him to get hot, but I'm just not seeing any reason that he will. So here's hoping that still happens. And a little update on last week. Jesse Puljujärvi is back on the top line. So if you were worried about him losing that deployment, he has gotten it back.
Yeah. Off the air, I did say that, Brian, as part of my things. I don't know if you're like not.
Oh, sorry.
I thought
I thought I heard you say it. You just didn't have it in your notes, so I wasn't sure.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes. So we'll. Yeah. All right, anyways, I already said that, so I'll just move on. Okay, over to Florida. More injuries. This is the injury show, and they've been getting hit, right? Alex Barkov, Anthony Duclair, Gustav Forsling all missed this past week. In their absence, we've got to shout out 2 guys who we pretty much wrote off as being at least like not worth what they were drafted at a couple shows ago. Like Sam Reinhart, we talked about how he's just not getting that premium role that we expected. Mackenzie Weegar was not doing as well as he had to start the year or how he was last year. But no, this past week was really good. Reinhart scored a goal. in 4 of his last 5 games, including a game versus Buffalo on Thursday, where he also put up 3 assists. So it was a huge week for Sam Reinhart. He's been playing with Huberdeau and Bennett, is clearly clicking with them. So I wonder if now Reinhart doesn't have as much to fear about getting bumped down to the third line again once everyone's healthy. Like, you remember it was like Owen Tippett playing with Huberdeau and Bennett. Then it was, of course, Verhaeghe with Duclair and Barkov on that top line. So, hopefully the coach is seeing something that he likes in Reinhart there so that he can stick with those good players and continue to produce. Do we have regrets? I believe we gave advice saying that Reinhart is like not going to be like that great, maybe like 55, 60 point guy. Maybe you could remind me what we said about Reinhart, but I'm starting to worry that maybe we gave premature advice, but at the same time, it was just like one good week. So maybe it's like we have to wait and see.
Let's wait and see for sure. That's always what we have to do. But if you're like, I honestly, Elon, you said the advice last time was bad, but I think we just said Reinhart could have opportunity with the injury that he didn't have before, and let's see if he can take advantage of it. And he did. Reinhart got the opportunity, took advantage. He scored 4 times on his last 15 shots, which actually levels him out in his shooting percentage for the year. So while that's a lot, it's like, oh, well, he was due for some good fortune. I think the real test for Reinhart is going to be what happens when Barkov and Duclair return. And I think we're still just going to wait and see about what happens. We didn't see an opening for Reinhart in the top 6, but now he's taken a spot from Owen Tippett that maybe he can hold. I don't know, Elon. I feel like you're jumping to the conclusion that Reinhart's been good there, so he's earned a spot to hold there. I'm not sure that's the case. This Florida team has shown production through so many different arrangements of their top 9. Great audition for Reinhart in the top 6. Great success for him. But I really don't think it guarantees anything. In fact, if I had Reinhart, especially if I've been holding him all this time, I'd be looking to sell before finding out whether he holds the top 6 spot. And if he holds it, it'll be I was mitigating risk. That's what I'd be trying to do, because I think right now his chances of staying in the top 6 and not falling back into the top 9 might not be better than 50% to me.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, maybe it's just the kind of thing where now with these injuries, he's getting a more prominent role. Because it's not only about what line you're on, but it's also your role on the team. Are you being put on the ice? With Barkov out, this line with Huberdeau and Bennett and Reinhart is being put out for all the prime offensive opportunities instead of them splitting the time. So yeah, it's just not a normal situation. So I agree with you, Brian, that maybe now's a good time to see if you can get a nice return for Reinhart in a trade. Then yeah, on D, like I said, Mackenzie Weegar, 8 points his last 9 games. Before that, he had a 5-game pointless drought. Also, he had 6 shots in each of his last 2 games. So Weegar looking really good. Also, I see that you wanted to talk about the newest member of the Karlsson family, Lucas Karlsson. So why don't you finish off our Panthers talk with some Florida D?
Oh, great. Did you want to give his numbers? Or you want me to do that?
I already said it. I already said my whole thing.
Okay.
Can't go back now.
Yeah. Okay. Just a sec.
I assumed if you put him in the notes without me asking a question about him that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, I just realized I was going to edit that down a bit, and so I'm just doing it on the fly here. Okay. Well, let me bring up his numbers. Okay. Yeah, Lucas Karlsson with 4 points in his last 2 games, a goal and 3 assists, 4 shots, 4 hits, 3 blocks, and he actually saw a season high ice time, including a penalty killing role. This is Lucas Karlsson, 19 and a half minutes last game against St. Louis, which is a big jump from the 15 minutes a night he had been seeing the few games previous, which is a big jump from the 10 minutes per night Karlsson had been seeing the few games prior to that. So this is a nice opportunity for Lucas Karlsson. The first time he's gotten this long a look in a top 4 defensive role. And Karlsson has looked good in the Swedish Hockey League, the Swedish Elite League, and in Rockford of the AHL before. But I asked Victor Nuno from Fantasy Hockey Life, our resident prospects expert, what's the deal with Lucas Karlsson? And Victor was like, well, he just hasn't had much opportunity to really show off what he can do lately. But now that he's got it, Victor's pretty convinced he's going to take advantage. Victor said that Lucas Karlsson is a good puck mover with a solid shot, has good offensive instincts, solid defensively too. So a nice all-around guy with an offensive lean. And Victor actually, I feel like he might be going out on a limb here, but he said Lucas Karlsson is good and could someday challenge Aaron Ekblad for power play time. And that Lucas Karlsson is good dynasty ad. And even in a redraft, Victor sees some value there. So I'm curious to see where this goes. We've seen one game of Lucas Karlsson playing more than 15 minutes. So like I'm reserving judgment, but I am watching closely. And if you're desperate for D, like maybe if you're adding someone like Shattenkirk, or if someone like Shillington is gone, maybe you do take a chance on Lucas Karlsson and see how far he goes. And then Mackenzie Weegar, great for him. You know, I'd have said that he's a 45 point player preseason, but now he's up 2 minutes a night at 5-on-5 and super healthy shot rates for a defenseman. So Weegar is a nice guy to have. He was someone I was sort of bearish on going into the season because everyone's so high on him. I'm still not as high as everyone else was, I think, but I'll put him at 45 points, give or take 5, with a couple shots, a couple hits, a couple blocks a night. A really useful guy to have in Mackenzie Weegar.
Yeah, by the way, for Lucas Karlsson, keep in mind, I did mention that Gustav Forsling is injured, so maybe like this increased role is because of that, because Forsling's been like a significant part of the Florida defense when he's been healthy. But, you know, the way it's going, like, you know, Forsling will come back and someone else will be injured. So maybe then Lucas Karlsson will still have an opportunity to stay and produce. And then, yeah, we'll have to see if he can live up to Victor's expectations in the long term. Okay, over to LA. So Andreas Athanasiou was out on the COVID protocol, but he's off that now. So is even back playing today? Because I know LA is currently playing against Edmonton. They're now up 2-1. Let's see, did Darnell Nurse scored? Of course, I was just about to say, did Darnell Nurse get a point on that? And there he is. So welcome back to Darnell Nurse. And I was going to look up Athanasiou. And yeah, so he is still not playing. So I'm not sure what the situation is there. In the meantime, if you recall, like Athanasiou was in the top 6. And now he's obviously not because he's been out. And it looks like a pretty solid top 6. Like Arvidsson, Deneau, and Iafallo have been doing well on the second line. And then Dustin Brown has been back up after being demoted to the bottom 6. He's been back up with Kopitar and Adrian Kempe on line 1. So now with Athanasiou back, we'll see if he bumps someone. Maybe he bumps like Dustin Brown back down, or maybe not. So we'll see what happens. Though there is another person that's coming in soon, and that's Quinton Byfield, the recent 2nd overall pick, who's been out with an ankle injury, but he's apparently off the IR. He's been practicing in non-contact jerseys. So Brian, you know, we've had a really great year of rookies. You know, we've had Mason, we've had Lucas Raymond, Trevor Zegras, just to name a couple. Like, is Quinton Byfield going to join that crew and be an impactful rookie this year? Or do you think it's going to be hard for him compared to those other guys?
I think it's going to be hard for Byfield compared to those other guys because there's just not the same inherent opportunity or holes on the depth chart for Byfield to fill that like Lucas Raymond had like easy opportunity to get into the top 6. Same with Trevor Zegras. And in LA, the top 6 is pretty well spoken for, isn't it? You've got Kopitar, Kempe, Brown, Iafallo, Arvidsson, Deneau. I mean, we saw Dustin Brown get bounced out of the top 6, but I think where he might actually be bearing the lead here, Elon, and what we talk about in LA, because he's back on the top line, and Dustin Brown has his time on ice back too. He's also put 17 shots on goal up in his last 4 games. He only has 1 goal and no assists to show for it all, but Dustin Brown seems to be working out there again on the top line, which means it's a decent time to look at Dustin Brown again. If he fell into free agency during his time that he was demoted, like Brown, don't get me wrong, still cold, but if you hold on the top line, and I think he will, he could regain rosterable value before long, which means that Quinton Byfield might be stuck on the outside looking in of a productive spot in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of ifs there. It's tough to say. Brown does actually have an assist today on an Adrian Kempe goal, so that's good. A good game for him. And yeah, you're right that maybe someone to look out for if he was dropped now that he's back on the top line. Of course, I think he got back there partially because Athanasiou like left, you know? And so who knows when everyone's fully healthy what the plan is. Like, for me, it's kind of like you broke the seal. Like, once we've seen that LA is willing to drop him to the bottom 6, I wonder if it's like the next opportunity they get, they'll do it again. Or maybe they'll be like, oh, that was terrible. What were we thinking? Like, let's never split up Brown and Kopitar again. So I guess we'll have to wait and see once the team is healthy, and we'll see how long it takes to wait for that. So okay, let's go to Minnesota. Good news and bad news here. Okay, Freddie Gaudreau is in the COVID protocol. He's been having a decent season. Good news is that Jared Spurgeon will likely be back soon, and the great news is that Matt Zuccarello returned after missing a couple games on Thursday, and he's been awesome. He had a goal and an assist and 7 shots in his 2 games since returning. Right back with Kirill on the top line and top power play, also with Ryan Hartman. Joel Eriksson-Ek was also on that top power play, and Jonas Brodin. But anyway, Zuccarello is now up to 18 points in 18 games on the year. And like, why not? Like, why wouldn't he be? Like, he's playing with Kaprizov, who is now up to 17 points in his last 8 games. Over 2 points per game in his last 8 games for Kirill Kaprizov. So he is the most amazing stud, and definitely at the point where anyone playing with him, I was saying like Trevor Zegras is someone that I'm going to want anyone playing with him. So obviously like Kaprizov is like at a level much higher than that at this point. Zuccarello's only 31% rostered on Yahoo. I honestly can't imagine not wanting him in like any format at this point. Like, he's with Kaprizov in all situations. He's at a point per game. So yeah. He's great. And of course, the main story here is that Kirill has taken a big step forward, even beyond, he won the Calder last year. You'd think that's pretty good, but now he's like already surpassing that by a lot. He's like on pace for like 100 points at this point. So exciting stuff over in Minnesota. And by the way, before we get asked, and I think we already got asked in the chat here today. Yeah, Kevin Fiala still cold. He's the one person not enjoying the Kaprizov exposure. All I'll say for that is like, Fiala has like 5, 5, 5, and 6 shots. Like, he's taking 5+ shots every game and nothing's going in. So to me, that's always the sign that I'm not going to drop the player, just because he's taking like so many shots. I understand why some people are getting frustrated, but I'd be a lot more frustrated if it was like a situation like some of the other players we've talked about where they're just like not like, Bjorkstrand, like not shooting at all. Like, Fiala's shooting. Like, if a couple of these goals get in, we're not even having this conversation. So anyway,
for sure, but they're not, and they seem to not. And we've been preaching patience on Fiala all season long. And I've tried to buy low in a few leagues and failed. And I think I'm actually at the point where I wouldn't buy low anymore. Like, I'd just be like, okay, not my problem. I still think Fiala's going to be good, but I'm at the point where I'm not really willing to take him on just in case. But like you said, Elon, everything still looks good under the hood. I still believe in him for all the reasons I did before. I might just be willing to not put my money where my mouth is in the same way that I would have a couple weeks ago, because of how long Fiala has not rewarded my faith and patience in him. But Matt Zuccarello, I mean, he was rosterable often last year alongside Kaprizov too. And we pointed out last year that Zuccarello was producing at an unsustainable pace after he came back from an injury, was tearing it up with Kaprizov. And it was also like a point per game pace like he's doing now. But this time around for Zuccarello, it does look similarly unsustainable. But as you said, with how amazing Kaprizov is, it's hard to imagine Zuccarello being below a 60-point pace when he gets to play alongside Kaprizov at 5-on-5 and on the power play. So Zuccarello sure does seem like a must roster.
Yeah, like, to me, like 60-point pace would even be surprising to me. Like, if Kaprizov keeps this up, like, it's kind of like Hyman on Edmonton. Like, I don't know, like, Hyman's obviously a really good player, but like with the deployment he's getting, you expect like maybe for him to be even better. And I don't know why that name just came to my mind. I think because he just I see that he assisted on this Darnell shorthanded goal. Also in Minnesota, Kaapo Kakkonen got 2 games in a row last week, which was surprising, right? He barely played all season. Then all of a sudden he got in versus Arizona and New Jersey, and he crushed both of those games. He did really well. Stopped 29 of 31 in both of those wins. Talbot had a good game on Saturday versus Toronto. So I don't know. It's interesting just to see, like, it's been basically Talbot all season long, with Kakkonen barely getting a shot. Maybe now Coach Eveson saw something in Kakkonen's like practices that said, okay, now he's ready. I'm curious if it could get up to 50-50 because Kakkonen looked good, or if this was just like randomly they decided, let's give him 2 games in a row. Like, he did well, right? So you'd think he gets back in the net, and if he does well again, who knows what could happen. So I don't really have a prediction here, and I don't know if you can either, but it's just interesting to see all of a sudden things change in how they're deploying their goalies this past week.
Yeah, I have a prediction about Minnesota, and that the time share, it's not going to go to 50-50. Maybe it'll lean a bit more towards Kakkonen. I mean, like you said, Talbot was starting the lion's share. He'd started 17 of 23 games for Minnesota before Kakkonen got these back-to-back starts. And Talbot, even not starting either of those games. Still ranks eighth in the NHL in both games started and minutes played. And Talbot in that time has been good. 915 save percentage, 13-5 record. So I don't think Minnesota's getting dissatisfied with Cam Talbot. I think it might have just been time for a rest. But now that Kakkonen has had a nice pair of starts, I still think the workload tilts heavily towards Cam Talbot, assuming there's no other reason we're not privy to that Cam Talbot needed a break. But I'm not about to recalibrate my crease expectations significantly for Minnesota.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, let's go to Montreal now. We already talked about Kale Clegg, so let's not do that again. They have more injuries, right? It's not only Jeff Petrie who's out. Josh Anderson was on a nice little run, so obviously a bummer to see him suffer an upper body injury. That's going to keep him out 2 to 4 weeks. Brendan Gallagher is on the COVID protocol. He tested positive, so he's going to be out 10 days at least. I guess on the plus side, Mike Hoffman is back, and he had 6 shots in the OT loss to Nashville on Saturday. No points, though. He's playing with Suzuki and Evans at even strength, which I guess should be good, but we've talked about Suzuki being cold before. Hoffman has 7 points in 14 games, averaging almost 3 shots per game, so that's nice. I guess a good piece of news on the score sheet is Cole Caulfield has 4 assists in his last 4 games after a 2-assist performance on Saturday. He's been playing with Toffoli and Dvorak and playing around 50% of the power play time, so you never know. Like, Caulfield is someone who we were super high on early in the season. Now at this point, I see him in free agency in all my leagues, and like I just browse through him, like I scroll through him, like not interested. But like obviously he has the high upside. We can't totally forget all that we were excited about. Obviously the line mates, like they're not as exciting as we hoped, but who knows? Maybe this is the start of something. 4 points in his last 4 games. Do you think that this is potentially the start of Caulfield going on a run, or do you think this is the kind of thing where he'll now go quiet again and we'll forget about him for a while?
I'm definitely interested in Cole Caulfield. I just still don't know if the infrastructure is there in Montreal for Cole Caulfield to succeed. Like, we've seen him start some really exciting plays and carry them through, but I don't think that's something we can count on Caulfield to do often. And so we're looking for someone else to start the play. And Montreal's had trouble all year getting plays started. And also with Caulfield, keep in mind, he's played fewer than 13 minutes in 3 of his last 4 games. So his deployment isn't great. They're really bringing him along slowly. And that's not what can get someone really fantasy relevant production. So I don't know that you need to jump on now. I would be keeping a close eye out though, because the upside and potential that we saw at the start of the season is still there. We're just taking a different route to try and get it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We just talked about Quinton Byfield, and now we're talking about Cole Caulfield. So we'll see 2 players who might not get the opportunity that we'd want them to get to reach their full potential, but it's up to them to, I guess, earn that opportunity. And so we'll see how they do. Caulfield now already like starting to heat up, and we'll see how Caulfield starting to heat up. And we'll see how Byfield does when he finally gets in the roster. Okay, over to Nashville. Look at them. No injuries of significance. And Ben and Lewis already chronicled how amazing Forsberg has been. We talked about Ryan Johansson last week and about Duchesne and Granlund like for a bunch of weeks. So I think we're pretty good on Nashville. Like, how about this? I'll point out Eli Tolvanen scored his first goal since the season opener on Saturday. And this guy's averaging almost 3 shots per game, but just hasn't been able to score. So kind of like a Fiala situation. Potentially, it's been a bit of bad luck. He was someone we were excited about last year. I remember you labeled him as like the guy who saved the power play in Nashville that year. Obviously now they're getting a lot of players who are helping with that power play, so they don't need only Tolvanen to save them. But yeah, I'm just curious if he's just had a bit of bad puck luck with all these shots, nothing going in. And now that he's gotten one in, I wonder if that, also breaks the seal. I think I used a different analogy for that before, but yeah, maybe that's the start of a little bit of a run for Tolvanen, who has been getting decent deployment. And now we'll see what he can do now that he scored his first goal of the year, or first goal since the opener.
It would be nice. We've seen, as you said, Ryan Johansson, Matt Duchesne, Mikael Granlund jump back into being fantasy relevant. Be nice for Tolvanen to join them. And Tolvanen, to his credit, he's shooting a ton more than last year at 5-on-5 and from better spots, but only seeing half the success rate. 4.5% shooting success for Tolvanen this year versus 10% last year. I'll caution, anyone making that comparison between on the same number of shots between this year and last year. He has 2 goals this year versus 11 goals last year. Last year, Tolvanen had more time and opportunity on the power play. So that helped his conversion rate and helped him get to 11 goals. So I don't think that Tolvanen should have 9 more goals because he's taken the same amount of shots as last year. So he should have the same number of goals. But maybe Tolvanen could have like a couple more at 5-on-5 and a couple more on the power play if life were being completely fair to him, which brings him, to 6 goals on the season, which is nice and would make him at least more often streamable, if not rosterable. Tolvanen also has low points participation. So there's a lot of reasons to think that Tolvanen has room to grow. but his ice time needs to grow with him. It hasn't been great this season. It's just been okay. I imagine if maybe Tolvanen catches in a bit more, as we think he should, that ice time will go up. This is all to say, like, I don't think Tolvanen's on the verge of this giant breakout, but agree he should be doing better than he is and might be someone to keep an eye on as like a deeper roster, like a depth scoring addition.
Yeah, I wanted to bring him up because all the other Nashville players seem to be, bouncing back from being bad for a while. So why can't Tolvanen be the next one, right? Okay, over in New Jersey, basically good news here. One of the rare teams where we don't have big injury news. It's outjury news. Jack Hughes is back. So everyone's healthy now, aside from, I guess, Miles Wood, who's obviously not a big fantasy contributor. The lines on Friday in the 8-4 loss to Winnipeg. And again, I'm going to tell you lines from an 8-4 loss, which means that's ripe to be shaken up because that's not a good result. But yeah, they had Hughes playing with Mercer and Janssen. So interesting that Dawson Mercer was on that really hot line with Janssen and Jesper Bratt, but I guess they decided to shake that up, and clearly it didn't go too well in that game. Then Nico Hischier has been playing with Zaka and Jesper Bratt, and then Tatar back in the bottom six. The top power play was Zaka, Hischier, Bratt, Hughes, and of course Hamilton as the QB. But of course, like I said, things will likely change. Brian, if you had to pick right now, there's a lot of Devils that have been really good. We've talked about a bunch of them over the year. If you had to pick one player starting now till the end of the year, assuming no injuries, who's going to lead the team in points from now till the end of the year? Currently, the leader is Jesper Bratt, who has 19 points in 22 games. Andreas Janssen right behind him with 18 points. Hughes has 4 points in 5 games. So if you average that out, it would be right around Bratt and Janssen in terms of point pace. But obviously, that's a very small sample size. But also, he's Jack Hughes. He's the guy who we expect going into the year to lead the team.
Right. And so I still am going to expect Jack Hughes to lead New Jersey in scoring. But I will say, I think Jesper Bratt is very much for real. His 5-on-5 production has been so impressive. Bratt has 19 points in 22 games. Only 2 of those 19 points coming on the power play, which is really super impressive for Jesper Bratt at 5-on-5. Maybe he doesn't quite continue the 70-point pace he's on, but I could see Bratt holding 60 and being rosterable straight through to the end of the season. Though, of course, we'll see if these new line combos work as well for Bratt as his line with Dawson Mercer and Andreas Janssen did. Speaking of Dawson Mercer, he's been so quiet the last few games, especially since he's been back. He's been bumped all around the lineup. Now he's playing with Jack Hughes. I was very ready to drop Dawson Mercer, but I'm now gonna hold on maybe another game or two. I think he plays Monday just to see how he does on line 1 or line 1A playing with Jack Hughes. Of course, you've got Nico Hischier on the other line too, who's not gonna lead the team in scoring, but maybe one day will put up the points I've always hoped he would. But yeah, odds to lead the team the rest of the season, I will go Hughes and then count Bratt very much in the race.
Yeah, good for Jesper Bratt. He's always interested us in short spurts, and now, he's doing it so far for a long stretch, and we'll see if he can keep it up. He's also had some injury troubles over the years, so not to jinx anything. I really hope he could actually play a full season. Over on the Islanders, Brock Nelson's still likely out a couple of weeks with his lower body injury. Ryan Pulock is also out long-term with the lower body injury of his own. Okay, that's nothing new. The new thing is that Matt Barzal has gotten off the schneid. He had a goal and 2 assists in his last couple of games after going pointless and in 5 games. He's still pacing for a career low 47-point pace with 11 points in 19 games overall. That was going into today. The Islanders are now losing to Chicago 2-1, and Barzal he got a power play assist. So there you go. So again, I got 3 straight games in a row where he's producing. So maybe there was a buy low opportunity at some point, and now it's over. Though at the same point, we've talked about him before and said how we don't want to set the ceiling too high because this Islanders team just doesn't score that many goals. His career low, I asked you for some other players if they're going to beat their career highs, like Seth Jones. So Matt Barzal's career low is 62 points in terms of a pace in his sophomore season. Do you think he's going to beat his career low this year, or is he going to set a new low mark? Because right now he's pacing for well below.
Well, we talk about this, and currently the Islanders are losing 2-1 to Chicago. And I think it's the third period or late in the second. There's a lot.
Brian, can I just interrupt? Sorry, because I just said that they are losing 2-1 to Chicago in the third period.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I gotta listen better. I've been jumping into the YouTube chat. Okay. Can he match his career low, or will he sink? Okay. So here's the thing. I was expecting to look at Matt Barzal's number and see a lot of sadness, but he's actually doing really well from one perspective, and that's shooting and scoring. Barzal has career high shot rates, shot attempt rates, and expected goals rates, and goals per 60 rates. That's amazing, but this is all coming at the expense of a few assists, I'd guess. And I'm not 100% sure where those assists have gone. Like he's not missing many. If you give Barzal, I don't know, 4 more assists, 5 more assists, that gets him up to our preseason expectations of him. So I don't think he's far off. And his on-ice shooting percentage has been a little low. So maybe another couple goals should have been scored while he's on the ice, and maybe he should have gotten an assist on those. A couple things I have noticed that maybe are a little bit of cause for concern, to think that maybe he will match his career low numbers. Barzal is down about 40 seconds a night on average of ice time, and the bigger story actually is he's down 2 minutes a night from the 1920 season, where Barzal paced for above 70 points. Barzal's expected goals rates and goals, sorry. Also, Barzal's, like the offense, the Islanders' offense, while Barzal's on the ice, but the expected and actual numbers are lower than past years. So the Isles' offense, ineffective or less effective when Barzal's on the ice than in the past. And as I mentioned, Barzal's on-ice shooting percentage is lower than past years. It's down below 7%. I think, Elon, you mentioned how the Isles are losing to Chicago right now, 2-1. The Isles are a mess. Like, this is shocking. They've been so good and steady for so long. And it's such a weird start to the season with that crazy long road trip and all these weird schedule quirks and new arena and postponed games. It's been a disaster. And I do trust that the Islanders can turn things around at some point. I just hope it happens soon. I think Barzal could recover to be on a 65-point pace the rest of the season. My advice to anybody looking at Barzal right now is that it's not as bad as it looks for him. I know it feels worse though, because waiting on an Isle to do anything for you, we've all been through a lot. any one of us who does own an Islander. So I would preach patience with Barzal and say, I'm not expecting him to have like a career worst season. I still think he can pace for 65 points. The Isles as a team need to turn it around, and he'll be able to do fine once they do that. And I have faith that Barry Trotz will figure it out.
Okay, so we'll see. I guess, yeah, like I said, he started to turn it around already. I don't feel too bad about them losing to Chicago. Marc-Andre Fleury has been one of the top goalies in the league over the past month or so. So why shouldn't they have trouble scoring against him? Also, we had a person in the chat here, Hunter Mooney, brought up that for our Seth Jones conversation, that Chicago's been doing something interesting with their power play. They've been having sort of a 1A, 1B power play. And actually today, Eric Gustafsson has a lot more power play time than Seth Jones. So obviously, if that continues, that puts a bit of a damper on our excitement for Seth Jones if he's lost the top power play or doesn't have that like super high percentage. But also he's Eric Gustafsson. It's hard to imagine it'll last, but the last time it did last for him, it was in Chicago. So something to watch. Maybe don't go sell the farm for Seth Jones just yet. Just like Brian already said you shouldn't, but he did say that the power play points will be there. And so that's, I don't know, whatever. It's just one game so far. Okay, so next up, let's go to the Rangers. So yeah, Igor Shesterkin suffered a lower body injury versus San Jose on Friday. Looked like he couldn't put any weight on his right leg, and people were saying this looks really bad, but the latest news, bad. But the latest news is good. Coach Gallant said that he'll be ready to return in a week. So I guess it just like looked bad, but it's fine. Still, in the meantime, the Rangers play 4 times next week against Chicago, Colorado, Buffalo, and Nashville. So varying levels of difficulty. And Alex Georgiev is now going to be your short-term starter. Brian, are we recommending him? Like, how interested are we in Alex Georgiev? He's had a few rough starts on the year, but was great on Saturday in the 3-2 win over Chicago, stopping 25 of 27. So, if people need a goalie, I guess what did we mention before? Who was it on Buffalo? Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Let's say if he and Georgiev... I mean, Rangers are clearly better. Of course we'd want Georgiev, right?
The Rangers are better offensively, but they're actually worse defensively. The Rangers are a bottom 3 defensive team in the league. And Georgiev is a goalie who's like super volatile. He can look really awesome or really awful. And I think this all just points out the work that Shesterkin has been doing in the Rangers crease. I don't know, if he's just been saving their butts or they're playing a style where they know they're going to be able to rely on Shesterkin to save them when they give up some high quality chances. So Georgiev has 4 starts coming up. I can see 2 really awesome ones and 2 really awful ones, really. He's this volatile kind of guy. He's won weeks and lost weeks. Probably not an NHL starter, but yeah, I would rather him than Georgiev. I'll say that just because I think he has a better chance of picking up the W, but I don't think... I think I'd rather Georgiev than Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen because he's got a better chance of picking up the win, but I think rate stats might be as much up in the air as UPL.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe call me old-fashioned. I just would take Georgiev because UPL, like, who even knows if he's good.
I would also take Georgiev if I'm picking for my own team.
Yeah. Okay. So next up in Ottawa, another team with no new injury news. They had a good week and actually had an outjury in Drake Batherson back from COVID, and he's looked good. He's had assists in each of his last couple of games, while he was overshadowed by Kachuk and Stutzla's 2 goal and 1 assist games versus Colorado, as well as Josh Norris's 1 goal and 1 assist for performance on Saturday. Batherson actually still leads the team with 18 points in 17 games. Even though he's like missed time, he still leads the team in points. Though Norris, though Norris and Kachuk are nipping at his heels with 17 and 16 points apiece. Brian, do you think Batherson could keep up this torrid start to the season now? Like he's, being a point per game guy, he's right back to the top line, top power play. How sustainable is this run by Batherson so far?
I think it's sustainable. We talked about Batherson not that long ago, and I went through the reasons why I thought he had this new 70-point upside for this season compared to the 55, 60 points I had him at preseason. And all of that still holds since the last time we talked about him. So no change on me believing a lot in Drake Batherson.
Okay, so over in Philly, here we go. Now the pain's going to continue with the injury. So Joel Farabee had finally started to get going. He had goals in 3 straight games before getting hurt on Wednesday with a shoulder injury, and he's out week to week. Derek Brassard was also on a nice run of 2 straight multi-point games before he got hurt a couple weeks ago, so he may be back soon. On the positive side, Kevin Hayes is back and has been centering a second line with Konechny and Frost, and Philly played today, and they got destroyed by Tampa 7-1. By the way, Toronto's destroying Winnipeg right now. Well, not destroying, but it's 5-3. It's getting to a point now where you just want to avoid playing goalies against Toronto and Tampa. Maybe I know that John Reed, my friend, asked in our patron Discord server if he should start Carter Hart against Tampa today, and everyone was like, "Yeah, start him." Like, usually goalies don't do so bad if they get negative points. Then he got like totally rocked. So that sucked for Carter Hart. Sorry about that, John, and also me, because I have him in one of my leagues. And then Martin Jones came in, and he was also not that great. Anyway, what was I talking about here? Oh, yeah, so Philly. I don't know. They have injuries. They lost this game. Oh, yeah, I was going to tell you the lines because Kevin Hayes is back, and he was centering a line, and he is still playing on that line, right? So it's Hayes, Konechny, Frost, then Atkinson with Giroux and Couturier, which seems like it should be a good line. And actually, the 1 goal that Philly did score was scored by Kem Atkinson. It was on the power play. He's also been on the top power play. He was assisted by Yandel and Giroux. But of course, after a 7-1 loss, maybe everything gets shaken up. And of course, Couturier still just as cold as he was before. So it's getting harder and harder to be excited about him. But hopefully he turns things around. And then what do we have here? On D, Ryan Ellis is also still out. So again, more injuries for Philly, out with his lower body injury. Still 5 years left after this one at $6.25 million per year. And he's starting to look like a bit of a Band-Aid boy, as Dauber would say. So I wonder if Philly's starting to get a little nervous about that. But hopefully he'll be back soon. It's interesting, right? Ellis, Yandel, Ristolainen, all like newcomers to the team this year. And the only D-man worth rostering at the moment is old reliable Ivan Provorov, who was doing nothing all year, but got going a bit, like 4 points in his previous 6 games going into today. So Brian, what do you think? I don't know. Like, let's say, here's a question about Philly. I brought up a bunch of the forwards here. Let's say you have like Atkinson and Kevin Hayes both in free agency. They're both rostered around the same spot. I actually added Atkinson recently in the cupful when Hayes was available. Who would you rather between those two? Just to like give one question about Philly.
Sure. Yeah, they're in their tailspin right now, right? It's brutal. There are 8 straight losses, including tonight's against Tampa. The goals are going to come to this Flyers team. We've talked about how painful it has been last week for the Flyers, or like for the last while. On the last episode, we talked about how painful it's been for Philly and how the team has deserved better. And we're going to see more value coming from these guys. It's just a matter of time. But yeah, it's frustrating waiting. You're asking about Atkinson and Hayes. Atkinson's a guy who's often found himself in good spots to produce, but never quite delivers in a consistent way. And I like Hayes more as like a well-rounded player, if not necessarily with the same offensive ceiling. Honestly, Elon, I think it's even odds between them, and I'd be interested in both. I think I'd lean maybe very slightly to Kevin Hayes, although Atkinson did well today. It was involved in the 1 Philly goal that was scored. So maybe I prefer him. The bottom line is that, yeah, all of these, like, it's been really frustrating, but there might be some future value to be found in those free Philly Flyers hanging out in free agency, because one day they're going to start scoring and winning again.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Free Philly Flyers, and yeah, I don't know, I was excited to see Atkinson dropped in the couple, so I jumped on him, and he's doing okay. Obviously, this team, like I said, is in a tailspin. They'll change things around, but obviously, generally, I wouldn't want to argue with someone playing with Giroux and Couturier. So we'll see if that lasts and if they can figure some things out. By the way, I got it wrong. It's Winnipeg is beating Toronto 5-3. Still, Connor Hellebuck not having the best game. It's only been 23 shots against. He's letting 3 goals. All right, so over to Pittsburgh. So Brian Rust is week to week with a lower body injury. So he joins Malkin on the shelf, who is making progress. So that's good news for Malkin. It was a huge game for the big guns on the Penguins on Saturday in the 4-1 win over Vancouver. Gensel had a hat trick and an assist. Crosby had a goal and 2 assists. Letang 3 assists. Jeff Carter coming up the rear with a power play assist. The other player playing with these guys is Evan Rodriguez, who didn't get a point, but he had 5 shots in this game and 6 shots in the previous game along with an assist. So to me, it seems pretty clear that these are the players that I just mentioned. Those are the only players that are worth rostering in any fantasy league at this point from Pittsburgh. Crosby, Gensel, Letang, Jeff Carter, and then Evan Rodriguez in your deeper leagues while he's playing on the top line and top power play with Crosby and Gensel. So if you're holding, this is an easy question for you, Brian. If you're holding Zucker, Kapanen, anyone else that I haven't mentioned, you're totally snoozing and you don't know what you're doing, right?
Well, I mean, let's not be so rude, but yeah, Kapanen, there's nothing there. He's on the third line. Zucker, he's playing 15 minutes a night, decent shots. He's actually hitting and blocking a little bit too. So Zucker makes an okay deep league option. But yeah, most leagues, you don't want either of these guys.
Yeah, okay. So then in San Jose, another fully healthy team. Woo! Actually, I wrote that, and then I realized I spoke too soon because the news came out this afternoon that Rudolph Balcers has a lower body injury. So it ended up being Noah Gregor and Alex Barabanov playing on the second line with Tomas Hertl. So nice opportunity for them. Did either of them do anything today? They lost 6-4 to Columbus, as we discussed, where Oliver Bjorkstrand got no points. Gregor, no points. Barabanov had an assist. So good for him. The big games were from Meyer and Matthew Nieto, who both had a couple of assists. Though really, the excitement came from the defense. First of all, shout out to Erik Karlsson, our Bay, our favorite player, who has started to run hot again. 5 points in his last 6 games going into today, and he scored a goal today. So EK65 keeps on rolling. And I was going to bring up how Brent Burns has totally disappeared. So going into today, this guy is just collapsed, like a Couture from last year or like a Bjorkstrand from this year, right? He started the season with 12 points in 13 games, but then went pointless in 11 games. And while he took 4 shots versus the Rangers on Saturday, before that he went 6 games in a row with only 0 or 1 shots, which is crazy because he was taking 6+ shots in a lot of games to start the year. So it's another one of these things where you wonder if he's injured. Though the good news is today he got on the score sheet for the first time in a really long time. He scored a goal assisted by Nieto and Meyer. He took 3 shots, which isn't anything to write home about, but it's obviously nice compared to what he had been doing in the previous few games. So, not to say that Brent Burns is back. If anything, this is one of those rare opportunities, like you said, I think about someone else earlier in the show, about Reinhart. Maybe if you see that there's actually a problem with him under the hood, then after one good game, that's when you try to flip him before he runs cold again. So what do you think about Burns in this crazy cold streak?
It's not awesome, right? And Ben and Lewis actually did a really good job on Brent Burns on an episode of Short Shifts this week. If you're not listening, you're missing out. And I agree with what Ben and Lewis said. We just can't expect the same thing we used to expect from Brent Burns. Hopefully he's still rosterable. But yeah, it's hard to hold on to Brent Burns when he goes, like you mentioned, 6 games with 0 or 1 shots. But that was part of a bigger 9-game run where he had 0 or 1 shots in 8 of those 9 games. This went on for a long time. I guess just a little longer than the 6 games, but still 40 points. Maybe you could expect from Brent Burns, maybe 45, maybe a couple shots per game averaged out, but nothing exciting. So yeah, if you can find anyone who's really interested in a 37 or 36-year-old Brent Burns, I would try and sell him for any value you can get back. He's rosterable. You could hold on in a cupful type deep league. That's the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. Let me just take that again. You could hold on to him. He is rosterable in the cupful. That's the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, kkupfl.com for more info. But barely. He's not someone I would be excited to have on my roster.
like to me, I want to get the serial music going, like, because I just don't get how he started the year like as one of the hottest defensemen in the league, taking a crap load of shots, and now
Yeah.
he just takes no shots. So to me, this like indicates one of these like weird something else is going on situations. Like if it was me, I'd hold on, and especially now that he's had 3 and 4 shots in each of his last couple of games, so maybe something was nagging and it's finally better. But it's so hard to speculate. I'd love to just like I wish. Why can't we be journalists in the NHL? Like, don't you think the questions that they ask in these post game news conferences are so boring and useless? Like, how did it feel scoring that goal? Or like, how are you coping with being on a cold? Like, I want to be like Brent Burns. You were taking 7 or 6 shots per game in a lot of games to start the year, and then you started doing 0 or 1 shots for a 7 game span or whatever. Like, what do you think is the reason? Is it because you're injured? Like, why can't someone just ask an actually useful question for us? Why do we have to speculate? Anyways, that's my little rant there.
Yeah.
About, and no offense to Sheng Peng, like he's a good journalist, but maybe you're not allowed to ask these types of questions. But I like this is really weird. This doesn't happen. How does
50 shots for Brent Burns in his first 14 games, only 10 shots in the 10 games since then, plus a few more tonight. But
yeah, maybe actually they have answered. To be fair, I haven't listened to any San Jose news conferences. I'm just guessing that they like. If there's any Sharks fans here, tell me. Like maybe they asked the coach, and the coach was like, "Yeah, we're trying a different style now. It wasn't working with Burns shooting so much. So, maybe that would explain it. And then maybe they've changed back. So who knows? So I'm interested to watch and see a little longer before I recommend dropping him outright in most leagues. Okay, Seattle. So they look like they're getting a bunch of players back. They had like Schwartz, Eberle, both hurt day to day, but now they're playing today. And Brian, do we have an update here on if Schwartz and Eberle are in the lineup?
I don't know.
Okay. Wait, are they playing today? Oh, they're not even.
Oh, Seattle's not playing today, but Eberle was practicing on the top line.
Okay, here, can you say that on the show, actually?
Okay, but I don't know about Schwartz.
I think that. Okay, let me just start the whole thing over then. All right, over to Seattle now, and yeah, so they've been hit with some injuries lately. Jaden Schwartz had a lower body injury, so did Jordan Eberle. I think that they're both like on track to be back soon. Like Eberle was practicing, I think Schwartz as well, so that might be a short-term thing. Mark Giordano has been on the COVID protocol. Can we stop here though on Giordano? Like I saw that I saw news today that's saying he might be back soon. So I don't know exactly what that means, if it's next game or maybe like sometime next week or the following week. But he was dropped in tier 1 of the Cupful. And I, like as I chronicled at the start of the show, I stupidly used a move to add him, figuring I didn't need to use my moves that much this week because I liked how my lineup looked. So I added him just to stash him in the IR because he was like a guy who people were interested in drafting. And like he's been solid enough this year. Like he started the year with 7 points in 12 games, which is like a high 40s point pace. But then he went ice cold before getting sick. He was pointless in 7 games. He was on the top power play during that time, and he was still taking some shots and like having his like solid enough block numbers. So, Brian, I'm curious, like, what should we be expecting from him? I guess this is like getting to be a trend here of players who just were like hot. Bjorkstrand, Brent Burns, now Giordano started the year hot, totally disappeared. Do you think that Giordano lands around the middle as like a 40-ish point defenseman, or do you think that he like isn't that special and he's really old, like older than Brent Burns, and we shouldn't really be expecting much offense from him at all anymore? Because the top power play, I don't know, it seems good. Like Burns versus Giordano, who would you take?
It's going to be, well, to answer your question about what's wrong with Giordano, whether like he's getting old or like he's getting bad or he's unlucky, it's a mix of it all, I think. Like Giordano especially is getting hurt on the power play where the unit is shooting less than 9% with the man advantage in Seattle, which is bad. Like that's worse than some teams shoot at 5-on-5. So he's not getting any help from his power play role at 5-on-5, low on ice shooting percentage too for Giordano. He's been relieved of his penalty kill role for whatever that's worth. Maybe that means some fewer blocks. So he's doing okay there. And yeah, Giordano's just getting old. He turned 38 in October. The nice little bit for Giordano, 3 or more shots in 5 of his last 8 games, but not a lot of points to show for it. And I think it really is a mix of Giordano not being as good as he once was and also not getting bounces on the ice. I don't see much reason you're like asking if he's about a 40-point guy. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And his shots and blocks like Brent Burns could make him worth holding in leagues where that's rewarded enough. If you're asking me to pick between Burns and Giordano, maybe Giordano has the bigger power play role, so I'll lean towards him, but Burns is 18 months younger, and I feel like that matters when you're 36 and 38 years old. So I think it's really close between the two. This is just like we've seen a steady decline from both these guys as their careers wrap up, and I just think they're guys who are going to be pretty boring on your rosters, still barely rosterable in some leagues, so don't pull the plug completely, but yeah, it's time to start looking for other options and not just assume that things are going to go well for them if you are holding them.
That's fair. I guess like if I wanted to be like the glass half full, kind of like these are the types of guys that are now going to be dropping to your free agency, and they could be like just solid, hopefully peripheral with still some upside since they are still deployed in an offensive role. So maybe if you're hurting for D, now's the time to take a swing on a Burns or Giordano if they're out there. But yeah, obviously we're not expecting the glory days from either of those guys. Okay, in St. Louis again, more injuries. Of course, the injury show. David Perron suffered an upper body injury back on November 26th versus Chicago. Hasn't played since. Justin Falk was on a really nice run, 5 points in 5 games, even without getting power play opportunities. But then he went on the COVID protocol after I had used all of my moves, like I said. So now hopefully he'll be back soon, but who knows? Falk joined Jordan Binnington, who Ben and Lewis already talked about earlier this week, who's on the COVID protocol. He's going to miss a bunch of games over the next couple of weeks. Ville Husso didn't have a great game versus Tampa on Thursday, but like I said, I'm getting to a point where I'm not going to blame goalies when they have bad games against Tampa. In fact, I wonder it would be a cool feature on Frozen Tools to like be able to like not count opponents when looking at a goalie's save percentage. Like I want to see Husso's save percentage versus Tampa and not versus Tampa, and then be able to just like discount those games. I also want to be able to not count overtime goals against to just get a better sense of how I think the goalie will do under normal circumstances. I don't know, Brian, if you think this is a useful feature or not for us to do our player analyses. But anyways, Husso did well in the next game against Florida on Saturday. He led in only 3 goals on the 51 shots he faced, so he just got peppered by the Panthers and he held his own. So that was really good. Brian, if you want a temporary starter due to injury over the next week or two, who do you like between Husso and Georgiev, who we had above Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen?
Yeah, I was gonna just go by team defense, and you want to know something crazy? Team defense this year does not look the way I expected. Vegas is letting up the most expected goals against per 60 minutes this season, which is uncharacteristic of them. St. Louis ranks 29th in expected goals against per 60 minutes. And then you have Columbus, Carolina, and Montreal 27th, 26th, and 25th in expected goals against per 60 minutes. These are all teams with strong defensive reputations. So I was going to say that Husso, I would prefer him to Georgiev because of the St. Louis defense. And we just said the Rangers are a bottom third defensive team in the league. But my assumption that St. Louis was better than that is wrong. They're worse defensively at 5-on-5 than the Rangers. So I looked at Husso's schedule, which has Florida, Detroit, Montreal, and Anaheim. I feel like there's a similar strength of schedule there to the Rangers. So I think my gut says Husso, just because I think maybe he's a smidge better goalie than Georgiev, but I don't think there's anything real to pick between them. So flip a coin.
Okay, that's fair. Maybe you could also say I think Husso's going to have the net a little longer than Georgiev if what Gallant is saying is true and Shesterkin is back in just a week. So maybe that's another reason to go Husso because you're going to get a few more games. By the way, Torrey Krug and Braden Shen both had like another pointless week. We highlighted them both being on cold streaks last week and it just continues, right? So if you were worried about them before, just obviously people are even more worried now. Braden Shen, I've pretty much lost all my patience in. And it looks like Scott Perunovich has been getting a significant amount of power play time and taking power play time from Torrey Krug. We were chatting on Discord about how like is it actually power play 1 or has it just been that for some reason power play 2 has been getting more time than power play 1 just randomly over the last couple of games, and that's why it looks like Perunovich has been getting more power play time than Krug. Either way, Krug's doing nothing and Perunovich put up 3 power play assists in his past 3 games over this past week, and he's up to 5 points in 10 games overall. And again, Torrey Krug doing absolutely nothing. So while we were only mildly concerned about Krug last week, are the alarm bells ringing much louder now, especially with Scott Perunovich showing that he might be better than Krug, or at least someone that can challenge for that job. Remember, Perunovich, when he first got called up, everyone was losing their minds because he was like leading the AHL in points, like as a defenseman. So now he's up in the NHL. He's been producing in his last 3 games. I wonder if this is a actual threat to Torrey Krug that makes his cold streak all the more alarming if he's potentially going to lose that power play spot.
I'm really not sure what's happening in St. Louis with Krug being periodically bumped off that top unit so many times since arriving as a Blue. And now, yeah, we have Perunovich here. Last time he didn't do a whole lot after we all ran to add him because we thought he'd be quarterbacking the power play for a bit. Maybe this time will be different. Elon, like you said, we've already seen some good production from him. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the reasons why Krug isn't holding this top power play role. We've seen the Blues not be 100% satisfied with Krug, though. So sure, let's see what Perunovich does. I'm just not sure why you have Torrey Krug if you're not going to have him play that role. It's like having Tyson Barrie and not playing him on the top power play. Like that's the whole point of having this guy, or big part of it. But I know that's fantasy adjacent. We just want to know, should he run to Perunovich? I would say that Krug has lost this job, even just temporarily, but enough times that, yeah, it is something I'm wondering. Is Krug not long for this role, especially if Perunovic can step in? So I am interested. And if you're looking for a D ad, someone like maybe he's in the Jamie Drysdale category, at least for the short term. Give him a few games. We'll see if he holds the role. And if he does, you're really happy about it.
Yeah, Drysdale's someone I wish I added in a couple of leagues, and now it's too late, and he's been really good lately. So yeah, Perunovic that's a really good comparison. I think Perunovic could be the next Drysdale that people might regret not having added when they had the chance. Or, who knows, or he struggles as someone who goes back to the minors. But he's someone I would definitely take a swing on right now if I wasn't afraid of using up my moves too quickly. Over in Tampa Bay, so I already said they're having another big game. Point and Kucherov are still out, though. The latest on Kucherov is that he's been skating, and here's a quote from that I saw, I think, on NBC Sports Edge. He seems to be on track for a return around Christmas or the New Year. That's soon. Like, my company's having a Christmas party next week, so I know that this is coming soon. And that means that, or I believe they're calling it the holiday party. But either way, that means that Kucherov might be back within a month. So very exciting if you've been having to have him on your IR all year. The only injury I could see here that happened recently is Cernak is day-to-day. I don't know, not worth much. Though, speaking of the Tampa D, Mikhail Sergachev is doing really well lately. He has 7 points in his last 8 games. You brought him up earlier as like a, boring but steady 40-ish point guy. He's now actually up to 13 points in 21 games. That's a 51-point pace, obviously on the heels of this really hot run. Are we like bought in a little more now on Sergachev? Maybe he could be the 50-point defenseman that we thought he would be when he was drafted and he had that really high pedigree? Or do you think what he's doing right now is unsustainable and we should still expect him to be this like 40-ish point guy moving forward?
I mean, it's not a big difference, right, between 40-ish point guy and 48-point guys. I'll kind of split the difference here and say Sergachev looks like a 45-point guy. Looks really similar to last year's 44-point pace in his underlying number. Has an extra secondary assist here or there. He looks good. He looks like someone you don't have to sort of drop because he goes quiet for a while, which is how he started his career. And now he seems to be steady enough. Before we move on from Tampa, Elon, I just want to marvel at the goal scorers for Tampa today. Are you ready for this?
Hit me.
Right. So they scored 7 goals, right? They beat Philly 7-1. The goal scorers in order: Ryan McDonough, Corey Perry, Taylor Radish, Boris Kachuk, Matthew Joseph, Pat Maroon, and again, Corey Perry on the power play. Isn't that crazy?
I mean, it is crazy. And Tampa Bay is like a team that won the cup last year and then lost their whole third line. And maybe there could have been some concern they don't have depth. Then now they're down Kucherov and Braden Point, probably 2 of their best players, like outside of Hedman and Stamkos, right? And they're still like having these insane games. Like, I don't know what they're doing. It must be like a coaching system a little bit, or they're just getting lucky with just getting all these good players. Yeah, Corey Perry was playing on a line with Maroon and Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, and he got a couple goals. And yeah, you said he's also been not even on the top power play. I'm seeing Stamkos, Palat, Killorn, Cirelli, and that was one power play for forwards. And then Perry with Maroon and Colts. I don't know. It's whatever he's doing, it's working. And nice to see these random guys on Tampa doing well. And this team is just like, how good are they going to be once everyone's healthy? Because like I said, Kucherov is coming back soon. So yeah, be afraid if your team is going up against Tampa. Okay, over in Toronto, Mitch Marner was injured in practice on Friday. Didn't play on Saturday versus the Wild. Did he play today? I'm assuming no. Yeah, Spezza played with Bunting and Matthews. Yeah, the big news here is while Marner's out, Jason Spezza's taken over not only Marner's spot on the top line with Matthews and Bunting, but he's also taken his spot on the top power play with Matthews, Nylander, Tavares, and of course Morgan Riley as the quarterback. And Spezza had a really big game on Saturday, right? He had 2 goals and 1 assist. No points today because, I mean, he is Jason Spezza. He's not going to get points every single game. The Leafs did score 3 goals and he didn't get in on any of them. What do you think? Obviously, Marner could be back like anytime, but in the meantime, while he's out, like how quickly should people be rushing to grab Spezza while he's in this amazing role? Like, let's say Spezza or Bunting, like, because Bunting's been really good lately. I'd go Bunting, but I know you really you love Jason Spezza, right?
I love Jason Spezza, but I would also go Bunting. But I think Spezza is a fun fit on that power play where he got to step in. And yeah, I like Spezza overall. Cool guy, cool hockey player, nice, like fun guy to root for. There aren't a ton of those in the NHL, but Jason Spezza has been and continues to be one of them. So way to go, Jason Spezza. Worth a stream in his spot for as long as Marner is out, which may not be that much longer.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully not for the Leafs. Though, no, they lost today. But in general, they're doing really well this year. But maybe that's because of Marner. Okay. So we got 4 teams left and 4 healthy teams. Actually, the major injuries, we're done with them now. So Vancouver, I mean, still not good. Like they're still not a great team. They did win 2 in a row last week versus Montreal and Ottawa. But those obviously are easier competition. They lost to the Penguins on Saturday. So I don't really want to get into Vancouver. Let's take a break from talking about this disappointing team. Unless,
Sure,
or Brian,
but
you
there's
want to.
actually, well, yeah, there's some breaking news that Vancouver has, it's going to be announced that Vancouver has fired
Oh
their,
boy.
like a bunch of their coaching staff and their GM, and Bruce Boudreau is going to come in and coach the team. So I will just say, if you've been holding on to Pedersen or Besser or Miller or any of these struggling Canucks, this is it. This is your moment that you've been waiting for things to turn around. I don't know if it'll happen right away. I don't know if it'll happen in a couple of weeks. I don't know if it'll happen at all, but I think it will. I trust Bruce Boudreau. I think he's going to get some good stuff out of that team. And Elon, I guess my question for you is, if you have Pedersen, would you like try and sell him off now when there's hope, or would you try and buy low on him? How would you approach this with some optimism in the air around Vancouver for the first time all season?
I mean, it's hard because it depends what I can get for if I have him. Like, I want to get someone really good, right? Like, I'm not going to sell him for peanuts if I've held him this long. But also, new coach doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going to like turn around completely. It's still the. By the way, I think that JT Miller did a spit take when you lumped him in with those guys because he's like almost at a point per game this year.
I just started naming Canucks.
But yeah, okay, we'll wait and see. I don't really want to speculate. Like, let's find out. Ben and Lewis can talk about if there's any big impacts if we see new line combinations this week. That's why we've got them, the best in the biz, to take over and talk about the news from the week. And obviously, we're going to be interested to see the new lines from Vancouver. Though the lines have shaken up a lot. It's more a matter of now seeing if they can click. Conor Garland, by the way, has been really good. Brian, I feel like you told me that I didn't do so badly trading him for Nachas earlier in the year, but right now I feel like Conor Garland has been better. But we'll see what happens. Okay, so Vegas. So we already talked about Pacioretty, Stone, Marchessault all returning on last week's show, and in a shocker to nobody, they've all been great. William Karlsson is playing today. So basically, we're back to full health. We're back to Karlsson with Marchessault and Smith, and then Stevenson with Pacioretty and Mark Stone. So look at that. The Vegas, I'm very excited for them. And by the way, we're still waiting, don't forget, on Jack Eichel to come back at some point. And that's going to be interesting for the Lions. And also then that's going to make this team like a super scary threat. I'd love to see what they can do against Tampa and Toronto. Those will be some really exciting games. Alec Martinez, by the way, might come back soon. And, in his absence, like Nicholas Hague has been getting some power play time and has done like decent-ish. Like he has a 36-point pace on the season, kind of like putting up the numbers that I expected from Alec Martinez, or maybe a little bit worse. So Hague has been good. I'm curious to see what Martinez will do because he obviously had that really slow run when he was healthy. And I know we expected him to obviously regress from his great numbers last year, but at the same time, when he was playing, it was like with Pacioretty and Stone out and during a stretch where just Vegas wasn't scoring at all. So I think Alec Martinez, I think I already said this on a show, right? So I'm just saying again, if and when he eventually comes back, I think he'll be like a good guy to grab out of free agency because the team's going to be scoring a lot more goals while he's there. I'll go to Washington now. So TJ Oshie and Connor Sherry both returned for the Caps game on Saturday versus Columbus. Neither put up a point, but they both jumped on the top power play with Ovi, Kuznetsov, and John Karlsson. They also both played on a line together with Connor McMichael. I'm talking about Sherry and Oshie. Oshie's likely rostered in most of listeners' leagues. Reminder, though, that Connor Sherry was on a nice run before he went down with his increased deployment, so maybe with him back, he's someone to look at again. Brian, the question I want to ask you about Washington is that we have more good news coming as Nicholas Backstrom was a full participant in Friday's practice, so he's probably going to be back pretty soon. We've been getting a lot of questions about how Backstrom's return will affect Evgeny Kuznetsov, since like Kuznetsov has been so great himself, and he's obviously like he's been good, but he's benefiting from being able to dish to Ovechkin, who's having this like torrid season. He's got 20 goals and 39 points in 25 games. Like no one expected this from Ovi. Maybe like point per game and like 50 goals, but nothing like this. So he's been insane, and Kuznetsov has benefited and helped. So yeah, with like Backstrom back, do we have to be afraid that Backstrom bumps Kuznetsov from that spot and that's going to like kill the amazing season he's been having? Or is it going to be the kind of thing where no, like Ovi and Kuznetsov are doing so well this year, why would the coaching staff like mess with that? Why not just put Backstrom to play with Oshie or whoever? So what do you think? Should we be like nervous about Kuznetsov, or just tell people like don't even worry about it, he'll be fine, and maybe be more nervous about Backstrom, who's maybe lost his chance to center Ovechkin at even strength?
Right. So you should definitely be a little nervous because Backstrom returning to the lineup means that there could be some kind of shaking up of the depth chart where Kuznetsov has been having success. But Elon, I'm about to blow your mind. Like you talked about how successful Kuznetsov has been in Ovi's monster season, how they're working together. Um, Only 4 of 9. Sorry.
By the way, I really need to go, so I'm going to wrap it up after this.
Well, we should
Only
probably
4
talk
of
about
9.
Winnipeg.
Okay, yeah, so only 4 of 9.
Okay.
Just like
Only 4 of Kuznetsov's 9 assists at 5-on-5 have been on Ovechkin goals. And on the power play, Kuznetsov hasn't even assisted on an Ovechkin goal. Overall, Kuznetsov has 7 assists on Alex Ovechkin goals, which is a much lower proportion than I was expecting to find for Kuznetsov assist totals. He has 20 assists, only 7 of them. I mean, only 7, still sizable, but he's not relying completely on Ovechkin. And what Kuznetsov is doing looks pretty sustainable too. But of course, everything changes if he's moved off of Ovechkin's line, ends up in a different power play role. Like, of course, it's good to play with Ovechkin, but to Kuznetsov's credit, he's been setting up everyone on the ice with him, not only Ovechkin. And so if you have Kuznetsov, I think you treat him actually similarly to Sam Reinhart managers. Like if you're uneasy now, maybe it's a good time to consider selling to mitigate the risk that he does get bumped. Like Kuznetsov could very well stay where he's been succeeding this year and keep reaping the benefits, and things could go really well. But if you don't want to wait and find out, then you could consider selling high. So if I had Kuznetsov now, I would be kicking some tires just to see what happens. But I also would be okay to wait and see how it plays out.
Yeah, I've got him in a couple leagues. I don't have the energy to start like kicking tires and trying to figure out what's even a good
lot of
return,
work.
because you need something really good back, right? So then I don't know. Like I would just hold on and hope for the best. It's been so successful so far, so we'll wait and see if I end up regretting it sometime down the line. And then finally, we end up in Winnipeg, a fully healthy team as well. They've won 2 of their last 3 that was going into today, and they just beat Toronto. Or no, there's still a whole period left, but they're currently winning 5-3. Blake Wheeler, by the way, 2 assists today, and he had another couple of good games. So all these people who held on to Blake Wheeler finally reaping some of the rewards. Obviously, when you play with Scheifele and Connor at even strength, and also on the power play, like you're going to be successful. So even if Wheeler has fallen a step, we said that he was even like, and I'm not saying he's not doing anything, but even like a player who did lose a lot of his skill would still be getting points in this situation. Right now he is, so good for him. Brian, that's it. We've made it through all 32 NHL teams. We've talked about all of their injuries. Hope people have enjoyed this show, and hopefully we didn't make you too depressed by discussing the IRs. The one positive is all these people hurt and out of the lineup. Like Brian said, it opens the door for new people to come in, and also they'll be back soon, and then we could get all excited as these players return. Hopefully these illnesses happening, and I don't know, who am I kidding? There's going to be new injuries every single week, but hopefully people enjoyed our run through the league. If you like the show, we'd love to hear from you. Tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson with any feedback. You could also ask us advice questions. If you want to become a patron of Keeping Karlsson, we'd love to get you on board for the holidays. I don't really know what that has to do with it, but that's something that people say, I guess, on podcasts around this time. So you want to give us a holiday present, support the show, become a patron, and we're going to give you a lot back in return, because you'll get to join our awesome community over on Discord, and also our other perks, which you can read all about at keepingkarlsson.com/patron. But with that, Brian, let's cue the outro music, and you can go ahead and read us the credits.
All right. And as this outro music plays, feel free to get out of your cars and start walking down the highway. Like it's a reference to the REM video for the song, after which this episode is named. Okay, this episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dabra Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our super supporters, Patty, Rob, David, Derek, Tom, Andrea, Christopher, and Flash. Thanks to Cupful coordinator Kevin Hebert and our team of co-commissions. Thanks Shams Benamor for keeping the amazing fantasy stream of news rolling on at Game Day Lines, at Game Day News NHL, and at Game Day Goalies on Twitter. Logo art by BrandonWeeb.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dauber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, Victor Nuno at Fantasy Hockey Life, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, NBC Sports Edge, and Yahoo.
Great job as always, Brian. This was so fun. Looking forward to doing this all again with you next week. And in the meantime, looking forward to hearing Ben and Lewis on the short shifts. By the way, check out Dave Betton's stream scheme, which just dropped earlier today. What a blast we're having here at Keeping Karlsson.
And also in the meantime, do everything you can to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone.
Awesome. Great show. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate all of you. Appreciate you, Brian. Sorry for having to rush at the end. Gotta go. Bye.
At the end.